Welcome everyone. I think we'd like to open the meeting. Can we ask for a roll call?
Beth Barron.
Here.
Debbie Braunfeld.
Here.
Dan Dart. I knew he was here. Okay. Jessica Deutsch.
Here.
Bill Hare.
Here.
Betsy Calber-Baglio.
Here.
Brian McDonald.
Present.
Gregory Stankiewicz.
Here.
Michelle Tuck-Ponder. Evelyn Spahn.
Here.
Daniel Dart. He was here. We'll mark him. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Shall I read the notice? Yeah. As required under the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice was given for this meeting. It was authorized by the Board of Education and forwarded to the municipal clerk, Princeton Packet, and the Times on January 10th, 2019, and distributed to the schools and others on the standard distribution list. The board reserves the right to enter into executive session during all meetings of the Board of Education. Board Policy 2230, recording devices, requires that we inform those attending this meeting that the proceedings are being recorded on video. This meeting is being video recorded and may also be live streamed. The representative of the sending district is authorized to vote on such matters that affect sending district or affects governance of the Princeton Public Schools as more specifically designated in the New Jersey statutes. In the event that the law is amended, the law shall take precedence over this bylaw. The sending district votes pertaining to personnel actions refer to high school, central, administrative, and district-wide staff only. Votes otherwise are considered abstentions. And I neglected to welcome all of you to this meeting. We are an elected, unpaid group of citizens who set policy and make decisions for the district, and we are always pleased to have members attend our meeting. I think we are ready to go. Thank you, Stephanie. So we've called our roll, and now we're going to start with the minutes. The first matter of business is the adoption of minutes for January 22nd, 2019. Can I have a motion? Brian? A second, Jess? Is there any discussion? We call for a vote. All in favor? We're going to do a show of hands. All in favor? Okay, the motion passed. Any abstentions? No. Second order is the adoption of minutes from February 12th, 2019. Can I have a motion, please?
I so move.
Dan? Second? Second? Brian? Any discussion? Can I have a show of hands of approval? Okay, there's no abstentions. Motion passed. No abstentions. The third item is the adoption of minutes for the board retreat on February 19th, 2019. Can I have a motion? Brian? Jess, a second. Discussion? Show of hands for approval. We've got the motion passed with Michelle Tuck-Ponder abstaining. And me. Betsy abstaining. 2 abstentions. Michelle and Betsy Betsy and Michelle.
Okay, can we hold for a second?
Yep. Okay, ready? Now on number 4, adoption of minutes of the February 19th budget workshop. May I have a motion? Greg, second. Bill, any discussion? Show of hands for approval. We've got all but, again, Michelle and Betsy abstaining. Motion's passed. And now I'll give my board president report. I would like to welcome everyone to the meeting this week. Thank you all for attending. We have been hard at work this month. This is our third meeting in February, and I want to thank my fellow board members for all of their time and energy that they've been giving to all of the work that we're doing together. We have this month approved the Vice President of Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Mike Volpe. We've confirmed him. We had a budget workshop with Stephanie Kennedy, who will be leaving at the end of this month, so we had preliminary numbers with her, and we were able to ask questions about the early parts of the budget. And we also did some training on effective committees. We have been continuing to work on behalf of our students, and one of the big projects we did this month and last month was to agree our goals as a board, and these goals will reflect our work through the end of this school year in May, and we will use them as a basis for evaluating ourselves as a board, and we also did district goals to reflect the work of our superintendent. And the goals of the board are attached to the meeting minutes, and we will talk about them briefly in a minute, but they relate to improving our governance, planning for the future, and engaging in advocacy on behalf of our students at the state level. We are also continuing to work on referendum implementation. Tonight we will be hearing from construction management firm, and we will be considering an investment advisor appointment. We have been continuing to work on our relationships and outreach. We had meetings this month with Princeton University, Kristen Applegate, and Brent Colburn, and we talked about ways that we could be better partners and help work together more closely and to review our shared interests and goals. And we also had a meeting with the municipality, representatives from the council and the mayor and the staff. And again, we talked about our relationship, how we could be better partners, how we could work together to find shared savings and more efficiencies. And there are so many issues that we as different public bodies share in common that we want to have regular communication. So we had a very good initial meeting there. We have also convened an ad hoc future enrollment committee to come back to the issue of demography. Obviously, we had a very challenging year last year as a board and as a community, and we wanted to start over this year very carefully to come back to the issues of space and enrollment, and so that we all understand as a community what the challenges are before us. So we've convened a committee to review the assumptions of our demographer and an updated model. That committee has met once and had some very lively discussion with the demographer about what is going into the model, and we look forward to receiving his updated work. The committee will be preparing a written narrative to explain the results of the updated demography report, and we'll be presenting that report to the board, to the public, and we hope to the planning board. And members of that committee, which is chaired by Ralph Widener, who is a retired member of our community with extensive experience with demography and planning, regional planning work. Also on the committee is Lance Liverman, Jeffrey Oakman, Elizabeth Armstrong, Jen Chen, and Wendy Wilton. And we have several of us from the board, including Dan Dart, myself, and Greg, who are liaisons to that committee. So we're we're looking forward to having that work happen and help us move forward on our larger planning challenges, which we continue to address. And we also have a meeting this week with the Master Plan Committee of the Planning Board for the municipality to discuss school site plan designations. Again, we're moving forward with work that was begun last year, and we look forward to making progress and moving ahead on that. And one last thing I'd like to just say we're going to try to be quick tonight. We're trying to have a stop by 10:30. I don't know if that's completely unrealistic. We've got 2 presentations and we've got a lot of work. So I'm going to be speaking fast, but we're really just trying to move through things. We're not trying to shut anybody down. We want to hear from everyone. But we ask that board members respect the fact that we have lots to do and that the public respects the fact that we give you time to comment, but we also really have a lot of business to move forward with. So thank you, everyone. And the last thing I'd like to say is I'd like to give a very probably unauthorized shout out to Stephanie Kennedy, our business administrator, who has, I think, threatened our superintendent with bodily harm if he does it, so I will. Stephanie, you're retiring after 20 years with the district, and 21.
All about accuracy of numbers.
21 years of perfect audits. I don't know, you've got numerous awards for your service and your work for the district, and you have been at hundreds of board and committee meetings, I'm sure thousands of hours. I would never want to have to count them up. And you, I view as someone like Atlas holding up the world. We think of Stephanie and we think of the district, and she seems to be there for everything that needs to be done, and we are going to miss your presence, your patience, your tact, your creativity, your strength in protecting the funds that are needed to educate our children. And we're just very grateful for your service, and you will be missed. So thank you. And I want to give you, we have a token of our appreciation. Thank you. Wow. Thank you. Okay.
One ice cube every Monday.
What's that?
One ice cube every Monday.
Oh, we do Wednesdays at home. So.
Yeah.
But yes.
So thank you.
Thank you.
And we're being modest in our goodbye to you, but out of respect for your sense of, thank you. And then, thank you. And then to close out my remarks, I'm going to turn it over to Greg Stankiewicz, because I think we're going to introduce our construction management firm now. Is that?
Sure. Yeah.
We'll bring them in.
Yeah.
We are going to do we have our candidate for construction management that is here, and they've brought a number of their people with them, and we would like to respect the fact that there's a number of them here, and we'd like to get them in early. So I think, Greg, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. So good evening, everyone. I wanted to just give a very brief overview on behalf of the Facilities Committee. The Facilities Committee was part of the Evaluation Committee that looked at the 4 finalist candidates for Construction Manager. The Evaluation Committee also included the Superintendent, our Business Administrator, our Director of Plant and Operations, and we had help from our professionals. Architect, construction counsel, who weren't part of the voting, but who were there to assist and for any questions. So very briefly, I wanted to thank everyone who served on the evaluation committee. We had pre-meeting conference calls to go over the importance of the construction manager role. And one of our board members describes it as a 4-legged stool. And I think that's a really apt description of what we're trying to put together as a team going forward. And so the construction manager is the eyes and ears for the board and administration, and an integral part going forward. I'm going to let them describe it, but just very, very briefly, on January 31st, we were privileged to interview 4 firms, all of which had very, very strong recommendations and a strong reputation. We spent over 3.5 hours interviewing the 4 firms. The evaluation committee reached a conclusion. It wasn't a unanimous, it was a majority conclusion that we wanted to recommend Epic as the construction manager going forward. And so very briefly, I just sent out on behalf of the evaluation committee a few of the reasons why. And this was something that we sent around as a draft to the evaluation committee first, and I included other people's comments. So very briefly, Epic was founded in 1971, has managed almost 1,000 school projects since then here in New Jersey. We felt that the volume of work that they do is about 4 times the size of the next firm, and we felt very comfortable with the type of experience that Epic would bring. We were very impressed that it was the only firm to really bring their entire team to the interview, and so it gave us a chance to really get a chance to find out who the administration and the board would be working with going forward on this important project. We were very impressed. The superintendent and director of plant and operations were very impressed with the site managers, and the site manager is a position that's here every day. It's really important that that's a very good fit. And we were also very impressed with the fact that EPIC has worked in numerous other districts in the surrounding area and with Princeton University as well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to actually hand it over to the superintendent now, and then we're going to have a chance to hear from the EPIC team. Before we're going to open it up to the other evaluation committee members to say whatever they wanted to say and ask questions. And then we also, if it's okay with the EPIC team, we'd like to give the public a chance as well to make comments and ask questions. And I really appreciate that because, again, this is a very important decision, and it's a very important part of the team going forward on the referendum that the community has entrusted us with. So with that, I wanted to hand it over to the superintendent.
Thank you, Greg. The referendum projects that we are undertaking as a school district are incredibly important to our students and to our community as a whole, and it's incredibly important that we do the projects right. Greg talked about the process we undertook. There were 4 firms that we evaluated. In my mind, as superintendent, EPIC stood head and shoulders above the other 3. They were, as Greg mentioned, the only firm to bring their entire team to the interview, a team that included individuals dedicated to cost estimating, constructability analysis, and back office scheduling. They were the only firm that not just exhibited a detailed understanding of the referendum projects, but also of our town and of our schools. They expressed how important it was to place the current referendum in a broader framework that includes possible future projects so as not to duplicate efforts. They were the only firm to address the risk that school districts face in being required to accept the low bid from contractors and to recommend the bundling of smaller projects into larger bids to attract quality contractors. EPIC was the only firm that specifically mentioned that the construction would be taking place in residential neighborhoods, and they proactively addressed issues related to parking, traffic, site cleanliness, student safety, and impact on learning that would be taking place in our buildings. Most importantly, in my mind, EPIC was the only firm that brought 2 site managers to the interview, both of whom were impressive in their experience and their willingness to communicate regularly with the board, with our architects, and with our building administrators. 25 years ago, when I was a building principal in Hopewell, my school underwent a 93,000 square foot renovation and new construction while students and staff were in the building. I spoke with the construction manager on that project every single day. He knew our schedule, he knew when special events would be taking place, and he let me know every step of the way what subcontractors were doing and when they would be doing it. Tony and Garrett, who are here tonight, are the site managers from EPIC who would be assigned to our schools. When I met them, when I heard them speak, I knew they were the ones who would work best with our administrators on behalf of our students and staff. So I am pleased to make the recommendation tonight. I'm pleased that they're here, and I look forward to having them share with the board more about their work with us.
Thank you. So I think we'll move forward with a short presentation, if you would, and then we'll have about 10 minutes for questions, if that's okay.
We'll keep it short and summary. We do have most of the team here tonight, and that is Mike, who's our project executive, Kathy, who's our pre-construction coordinator, and yes, our 2 site managers, Garrett and Tony. Who's missing tonight due to a prior conflict is our scheduling professional, Seth, who you folks had met at the last interview. I'm Joel Lazard. I'm a VP at EPIC, and I'm a big part of the team too, just not physically the one you're going to see every day. We thought tonight we would very briefly speak about what you see up there now and what's already been touched on, but then very quickly, in summary, speak to the 3 phases of what we'd be doing for you. And that is what we call the pre-construction phase, the actual construction phase, and then the closeout phase. That's really what encompasses what you're hiring us to oversee, and there's a lot to do in each of those phases. So quickly, in summary, yes, we're a 48-year-old organization, and the very first thing we ever did as a company was work at Rutgers University on their campus. And ever since then, we haven't stopped working within academic environs. So we know what it's like to work around students and visitors and faculty and all that goes on. as would happen here. In 1994, we were given our first opportunity to provide construction management services to a New Jersey K-12 in Marlborough. And since then, as you see, 133 programs have selected Epic to serve as their construction management professional. So we're very proud of the reputation, the resume, and the word of mouth, because it's a lot of that, you know, who did you use, or how did that go? So we bring a tremendous amount of experience. We think everything you're doing here, we as a group and as a company have seen before. What's different about Epic too is the fact that Epic is a builder as well. We're not going to be building for you, but another side of Epic builds schools. So we take that information, that experience, and that is what helps us guide you when we're going to look at pre-construction, when we're going to look at what Spiesel is designing, and we're going to look at what contractors are trying to do once they get on board. We can bring our own hat to that. We also have a division that does interiors work, so everything in here we actually do as well. Not for you. We have a millwork shop that makes these kinds of tables. So a lot of what's going to happen on your projects, we have a great base of information to look to. We've worked in Mercer County for a long time. We've worked, importantly, with Spiesel for a long time. Spiesel is a true K-12 architectural design firm. And that's important because you want to hire people to do what they do best. And we're happy to say, from our experience, Spiesel is really good at what you need them to do. And that is be a K-12 architectural firm. So you can see, 15 years, 11 programs, $400 million worth of work. But remember, we're also here to oversee them on your behalf. So while it's great that they're collaborative and we have a lot of experience with them, as much as the contractor can sometimes not live up to their expectations, well, frankly, so sometimes can the consultant team. And in the middle, we're the orchestrator to make sure everybody, even including you guys, are making decisions when we need that to happen to keep everything going. Lastly, we're real proud of our Princeton experience. We worked with you on the last $82 million referendum, okay? So we've been doing it since then. We've been practicing really hard. But in addition, during that time, we've also worked for Princeton University for the last decade. And as you probably know, they're very selective in who they choose to work with. So we're pleased to have done consistent work for them year in and year out. And lastly, but not leastly, Kathy and Mike are 28-year residents of Princeton. And we think that's meaningful because, you know, we care, this is what we do, but who cares more than residents and taxpayers about what's going on and whose child graduated through the system? So in summary, that's who we are. Next. Now we want to talk very quickly, again, about what we do. So that starts off with pre-construction. Right away, the things are being designed, somebody needs to watch over them. So, Mike, Kathy?
So I will be that person from start to end that will watch over the process, make sure the communication is right, make sure my team has the resources they need, as Joel mentioned. I personally have managed construction of schools. Right now I'm building a school. I've built several other schools. So you're getting that experience as oversight from start to end. I'm also a registered architect in the state of New Jersey.
Pre-construction is the phase of the project where we work to look at the drawings and to coordinate all aspects of the site logistics and constructability of the project. And at this point, I would also be working with our site managers where we look at areas for staging for the contractors, how they'll access the building, and anything that'll affect each of the sites, the parking, the busing, the bus drop-offs, and everything. So we will get all that information together and include it in the bid documents so that it's very clear to the contractors when we bid these projects, our rules of the road and how they'll work on your schools so they don't affect the teachers and the instruction of the schools at the time.
Yeah, so Tony Toledo, been with Epic 22 years, been doing a lot of school construction. Kathy and I have worked a lot together, and the pre-construction phase is important to us also in the field. As Kathy mentioned with the site logistics plan, just something as simple as designated parking for the contractors, fencing off the construction area, separating the space from the workers and the students and the staff and the construction going on. And there's a lot of different parameters, a lot of different things going on at different sites. So at the high school, there's the residents living right behind the school, so we want to be conscious of that. At the community park school, you have the park with the pool, so we want to be conscious of that during the summer, and how is that going to affect traffic flow, and how are we going to separate things, and keeping the place neat and clean as well. So we want to put that all up front in the pre-construction documents so that the contractors all know this is what is going to happen during the project.
They all bid the same set of rules, they all see the same thing, and they know it up front. So once we get on site, they can't say, well, we want to do this now. No, look at page 12. This is what you're doing now. And there's a lot of devil in the detail that has to take place that we found, again, an amassing of all of our experiences from here and there. That's what all goes into this review process. That's what goes in the bids. That's what we hope then we have good, solid, even playing field bids, and contractors then know what is in store for them. So that's kind of a proactive summary of what happens for the next few months. We award the job. Now we're on site.
So safety is up there first because it's the most important thing. I have kids. Most of the workers on site have kids, so we don't want to get hurt on the job. And not just the safety of the workers, but the safety of staff, students, and even just the public at large. But as we talked about before, during the pre-con phase, we will lay all that out with the contractors and what their expectations are and what their requirements are going to be. So that helps us enforce that during construction. I like to call that like our tool belt, the front end of the specifications, because that's what we use to control the contractors on site. But housekeeping also, we want the site to look clean, we want it to look neat. If it looks sloppy, then it's not good for you, it's not good for us, it's not good for anybody.
And we know the facilities are used virtually 24/7 anymore, so we can't just worry about what happens while we're on site. It has to be left in a usable condition after hours, weekends, etc. It's reflective of the community, and our job is to make sure the contractors respect that.
So another thing is even like badging and contract identification, which Garrett, on his project, they have a good system.
We use a system called TPAS. Basically, contractor scans in the morning, we run their ID through our system, and we find out if it's safe whether or not they work in the school. Print out a badge for them, they're cleared to work on site.
Communication is key. Every school will know who to talk to, we'll know who to talk to. We also make a very proactive to speak to the police, the fire, EMS, building officials. Nobody likes to be surprised. That's one thing we've certainly learned over the years. No surprises. So the more we outreach and communicate at all times, we find certainly things go a lot more smoothly. Seth, the gentleman I mentioned who's not here, is our scheduling coordinator. That's a different role than we had when we worked for you back in 2002 to 2006. We've learned over the years that schedule is the key, and while our site managers are really good at monitoring that, having someone specifically to focus on that has proven very beneficial. The caliber of the contractor that bids these, unfortunately you are stuck with the low bidder. They have to do a schedule. A lot of times they just do it because they have to do it and it doesn't make any logical sense. So we have someone with 20+ years of experience doing nothing but scheduling, analyzing and critiquing those schedules. Contractually, we live and die by those things, and they're super important. So they work hand in glove with our guys.
The other thing I would say is the schedule hopefully starts tomorrow, which means in pre-construction. We identify all the activities, all the people that are accountable, all the parties that are accountable, to make sure we can start construction and finish it in line with your target goals. That could impact, decisions that impact equipment orders, type of systems, keeping the architect in line, making sure that our guys have the documents, the tight documents they need day one to deliver that project per your expectations.
If these things aren't bid at a certain time and awarded at a certain time, well, the construction can't start in enough time to get you occupied by the time you need it. So everything starts to back up, and it's just one big management of schedule. Change orders.
So, change orders. Nobody likes to hear that word. It's an ugly word, but it's a reality. It exists. It happens, especially in situations where we have existing conditions, unknown conditions. It happens. But there's also change orders where you as a board may decide to make some changes along the way. But the first thing we're going to do is make sure that the contractor's entitled to it. Are they entitled to the change? We're going to understand the documents. With the architect's help, we're going to review what the contractor submits. And then once it's determined that they're entitled to it, we're going to make an evaluation that it's fair and it's a reasonable cost. As Joel said, we're not just construction managers. We also do general contracting. We do interiors work. So even if I'm not sure of something, I can just pick up the phone and call somebody. And I've been doing this 20 years, so there's a lot of things I've seen and a lot I haven't. But, like I said, change orders, nobody likes to hear them, but it's part of it, and we'll deal with it.
The next aspect we focus on is quality assurance. Basically, from the start of the job, we start with, basically pre-punch list. What needs to be done, what's getting done, is it in accordance with the contract documents? Like they had mentioned earlier, we have general contracting capabilities. What I like to do is take a picture of something I'm not sure of. Does this look right? I text it to someone who's working on it in my company right now, and they're like, no, it doesn't look right, or yes, this is why they have to do it this way, because this is how you get that certain finish. We also make sure mock-ups are done in a timely manner, and everybody's on board for when they need to be scheduled.
Pre-installation meetings.
Yep.
Again, it's a lot of little steps you take along the way to ensure the finished product matches what all of our expectations and what you're paying for are.
Absolutely.
Reporting.
So, reporting, right? We do daily reports, weekly reports, monthly reports, meeting minutes. There's a lot of record keeping, a lot of reporting that goes on. But one thing that we like to do also is a weekly bullet that we will distribute to the board. So it's just a quick little bullet of what's going on for the next week, what to expect, maybe a couple pictures. It keeps you up to date. Some boards have taken that and posted it on their website, and we can certainly tailor that anyway. But I think it's great for you guys to have as a tool, because you're at the soccer game or the basketball game, and somebody's asking you what's going on. At least you know what's going on. And a lot of what's happening is inside. It's not visible to the public as they drive by, so it keeps you informed. So we like to do that. Another thing is the Viewpoint.
Yes, we offer the Viewpoint project management software, which I'm going to get into.
This is something new we also didn't have.
Yes.
So another part of our evolution over time that we think offers a great amount of transparency.
So what I love about Viewpoint is contractors can be very disorganized. This program doesn't give them a choice. They have no choice but to get organized. Currently, Kathy and I are using this up in Glen Ridge. Basically, how we have it split up is we have a overall Board of Ed folder. That's what the administration and us communicate through without any contractors. And then our separate projects, we break up per contractor. We give the contractor power to add their subcontractors. We add school facilities, school administrators. Every school is different. Every school needs different communication. This provides us a way to kind of, centralize everything in one location, and it's very useful. So getting into one of the job folders, this is typically what your job folder looks like. What I love about this is if you look in the top right, there's a column that says assigned to me. So from the second I start putting items up on this website, they give me a submittal schedule. I immediately put it up, and it's going to give them 100 items with the due dates of when they have to be done, and it's tracked. The entire time it's tracked. Everything, every item they look at, every item they open, anything that needs to be done will be done and set in. You can see what's coming up in the next couple days. You can see how many items are open, etc. Moving on, this is what our submittals will look like. Basically, I can issue them a submittal, and you can see we have a couple due February 8th, due tomorrow, one's overdue. It tells you whose court it's in, who was the last to see it, when it needs to get done by. It's very powerful, and it eliminates a lot of disorganization that was problematic in the past. This is what a typical submittal would look like, and the thing I love about this is right down here at the bottom, this full history bar. Nobody can escape the fact that they haven't viewed anything, and it keeps everything transparent, which I really like. This is just a resubmittal, helps with the organization, so there's no lost, oh, I submitted it this revision. Every revision is under one submittal. It's very nice. Next, we move into RFIs. RFIs are kind of laid out similar to submittals, once again, broken down per court.
Maybe for those that don't know, RFI is a request for information.
Yes.
So when a contractor maybe is unsure of something or of a detail or is asking for a question, they would submit an RFI.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And our job is to keep those moving.
Yes.
So, they don't get answers, they don't do anything. So we gotta say, hey, Beazle, answer.
Right.
Bob, move it.
Every time there's
However, in defense of the architect, 8 times out of 10, it's on the drawing somewhere.
Right. So that's why we look at it.
We find it for them.
We look at it too and make sure that it's not there and maybe it's just an easy answer.
every time something's posted or commented on, whoever the attached parties are going to get a notification. So it's very real time. Next, just an example of the documents folder in here for our project. This is where we keep record items such as asbestos air results, closeout documentation, meeting minutes, etc. We can expand or contract this as much as we want, and we can also keep access between who we want within these folders. Go back.
Okay.
Next is the contacts folder. As you can see, Everything can be transparent or as non-transparent as we want. We like to keep everything flowing and everything moving and have the ability to add as many people in as we need to each job.
And the whole software is run on Amazon, the web services, so it's very fast. I mean, sort of the old school way we would have done it was through an FTP site or something, and the drawings took forever. This, we have, 102 documents, and you open it, and it opens like that, and it's really nice. It's nice for everybody.
And it's in real time, whomever you want to be able to access this, access certain pieces of it, et cetera. It's completely tailorable to however, customizable to what you want and what we all decide collectively makes sense. But it's an incredibly powerful tool that we're really happy to offer to you all. Finally, okay, we get through all the construction, but we're still not done, because as it says, it's not done at 99%. I think everybody can attest to trying to do anything on their own that it's hard to finish. Last 1% can take longer than the preceding 99 sometimes. So we say the process starts early.
Right. The one thing that I will harp on my guys about is starting the closeout list early. Sometimes in specs, there are things in there that carry over from other jobs that may or may not be required. There are some things that may be required that aren't in there, but we get that list established up front, so we can start chasing the subs, tomorrow, as soon as they're awarded. So you have the documents to maintain the building in the future, they're there. You know exactly what's in your building, and you know how to take care of it.
Right, and with, that's important for the facilities department. We're gone, they need to have this information, and so we want to make it easy.
What I like to do, as soon as we create that list of what we need for closeout, I'll upload it to Viewpoint, even a week or two into the job. This way they have the item, they know what they're responsible for, and they can see it, and it's there until they submit it. And, a lot of the times they'll submit things months in advance when, you're typically used to just because they want to get the item out of their court.
So another thing that we like to do is a work list. So a work list is basically a detailed list of what needs to be done in each individual room. It's not a punch list, but it just helps us track exactly where the contractor is as far as what needs to be completed. And a lot of times they'll even take that and distribute it amongst their subcontractors, and it helps them. So it'll just have everything from painting to installing the floor to the base. And then that also helps with the architect when it comes time for him to put it together as punch list. It reduces the amount of punch list items because we're already ahead of that and tracking some things and trying to get things done while the contractor's focused on the project.
The punch list is the last little bits of things that aren't quite done right. But when we're in August, and so are 30 other school districts where all these other contractors are running around like chickens, we want to be the better organized one to keep them on site, to get it done before they run off to the other 29 places. So again, these little proactive steps help us, again, add value to the program. The last piece of what we do in closeout is called an 11-month warranty inspection.
The tune-up.
You get a performance and payment bond on these contractors as a public entity. That performance and payment bond entitles you to a 1-year maintenance bond. That means they are obligated to come back and fix things. So our job on your behalf is to work with facilities, look at what is not maintenance per se, but should still be in better order after 11 months, and get those contractors back here. So again, we like to think we're the gift that keeps on giving when it's done, to really, truly finish up our job on your behalf. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're going to open up for some questions from the board. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask while we have the people here in front of us?
I have a question. Hi, thank you. That was a great presentation. My question goes back to the process you talked about when you checked in folks who work on the construction team. They check in, you clear them, and then they're authorized to work on the project. Is that the description that you provided for me?
In essence, legally, there's nothing that pops up on their license that says they have a pre-existing arrest record or something that will readily pop up via a license inspection. That's the quickest, most practical approach to the transient nature of the construction industry and people coming and going. And we have to deal with this naturally on every one of our K-12 programs. And we found the system that Garrett described to currently be the most expeditious.
Yeah, we're currently using it down at Pinelands Regional High School. You scan their license, it a message.
The
T-Pass,
T-Pass, which
yeah.
is what the schools use often to let people in the building, and they have it for all their visitors, so that we have our own T-Pass scanner in our trailer, so we can T-Pass scan them and get a badge.
Print out a badge, it'll say contractor,
I mean-
have their picture on it.
And I think in fairness, that's something we've done and are offering as an idea. This is a very touchy subject and something that would need, would be a discussion, I believe, for the whole
Every
board.
district tends to handle it their
I mean,
own
yeah.
way necessarily.
And we have other districts that require a full background check on every contractor that goes in, and it's doable, but it gets very difficult, particularly in the nature of a transient summer job where you're trying to roll people through. They're maybe working second shift in the spring and then crazy all summer and maybe just finishing, second shift in the fall, and so that's.
We put badges on the workers, and when you're in a high school environment, a lot of times the workers look a lot like the kids, so, it's hard to tell one from the other. But by having the badging system, and often a different color badge, depending upon the trade, it's a little more readily identifiable. Oh, it was a guy in green badge. Okay, well, that narrows it down, but we've got the number, and again, that's one of the reasons we proposed 2 site manager candidates. Because of the volume of work that's going to be going on in multiple sites concurrently, we felt that just have one, for the sake of perhaps saving a few dollars, was just going to have Tony running back and forth. Whereas if the board decides that this is a better plan, we've now got 2 candidates who can share the wealth, share the load, and be better watchdogs over what you're hiring us to do in the first place. So, nothing's perfect, but knock wood, so far, we haven't had any issues with construction workers. It is zero tolerance, however, and, anything that goes off the site.
And there's a construction manager present every day?
Yes.
Yes, the 2 individuals we propose are full-time. Whenever there's contractors on site, we're here for you.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
No, do you have a question? You want to go first? Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you. You gave a fabulous presentation during the evaluation session, and you did a great job tonight. And I love the fact that several of you live in our community. That's very important to me. And you've had great success as a firm and have a good reputation. And so you should be proud of that. My concerns are whether you're the right firm for us at this time. And the last referendum, and I'm getting my information somewhat secondhand from articles in the newspaper and discussions with community members, but didn't go very well for us. We had engineering problems that led to flooding at the high school. We had an architecture problem that resulted in a lawsuit. We had cost overruns that resulted in a claim of $10.8 million for a contractor. And I can't assign blame. I wasn't there. I don't know. So I really can't say if you did the best job anyone could have done, and you have nothing to do with any of those problems that occurred. But I have a number of concerns, and I want to read a quote. And again, my information is coming from newspaper articles, and I can't validate any of it because I wasn't around at that time. But I'd like to read a quote from the last superintendent. There were issues right from the beginning of construction. As contractors began to translate the drawings into work on the building, both new construction and renovation, said Mrs. Wilson, the prior superintendent. Now, I know we hired a local architect at that time, and there was a lawsuit and a settlement and all that. But my concern is that, and to quote Ben Franklin, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And my concern is the construction manager, Epic, at that time did not catch these mistakes. Did not catch the engineer's mistakes. Did not catch the architect's mistakes. And all of those delays resulted in a lawsuit from a contractor that resulted in a very, very large settlement. When I went through your bid, compared to the others, and I get back to Mrs. Wilson's quote about all the problems that occurred at the beginning. And these things snowball. If the engineering design is wrong, the architecture plans are wrong, the bid documents are wrong. The bid documents are wrong, the construction is wrong, or you have change orders. It just flows downhill. And so one of the things I was concerned about, of the 4 firms that we evaluated, your bid, which our architect broke out into a pre-construction phase, was the lowest by a very significant amount. So I felt I could only conclude from that you were going to devote less time up front to the critical architecture and engineering phase. And you were lower than one firm by 50% and lower by another firm by almost 100% in the pre-construction phase. Now, normally, I'm a finance person, and I love low bids. But in this particular case, we're required to hire the low-cost contractor. So I want the best construction manager that money can buy. So I could only conclude from that you're underbidding your services, or were simply not devoting enough time to that critical pre-construction phase. So I hate to say this, but your involvement in the prior referendum, which had so many problems, is disqualifying for me. Your bid on the pre-construction phase is the one that I view as the most important, was low, and I can only, relative to the other 3, I can only conclude you would spend less time on that. Now, our facilities committee is very accomplished. Unfortunately, not in construction, architecture, engineering, and design. We have 2 exceptional lawyers, a highly accomplished educator, academician, Brian McDonald, who's highly accomplished in business and the not-for-profit world. But we're missing that critical piece. And so I'm really looking for someone that can dedicate more time to that front portion of it. And the last part is, I'm going to say one more thing.
We got to have time to respond here, Dan. Keep going.
It's just the last one is really a governance issue. And I'm for transparency and openness and community involvement. And I had asked that this evaluation, partly because of the skills of our committee, be done in open session. And it was done in closed session. So we did not have the concertable input of the community. The community is paying for the $27 million. And I thought they should play a role in how it was spent.
Thank you, Dan. Can we give them a chance to respond?
Yes,
Thank you
I
for
just
that.
wanted to.
Great. Would you like to respond to any of that, or maybe you want to speak a little bit to your role in the last referendum projects?
Sure. I mean, that was a long time ago, and I think just looking forward, without getting into the weeds and details, and you're right, there were a lot of things that we could talk about that may or may not be accurate entirely, as you perhaps have laid out. At the time, we worked with an architectural firm that, while very famous and very large and very sophisticated, were not K-12 architects, okay? And so there was a lot of back and forth to try to make a non-K-12 architect into a K-12 architect. What you have here is very different, okay? And I can only speak about going forward. We can't undo the past. But the collaborative spirit that we see in the experience that we've had with Spiesel and their consultant team, respectfully said, is dramatically different than what we might have had 18 years ago. And we can fully expect from the experience we've had with them going forward that that will remain the case. And when we have opinions and suggestions and recommendations that we strongly put out there, that someone's going to listen to them. In contrast, perhaps, to things that may have occurred back then. We also have been doing this for 18 years now, and we have a lot more lessons learned, and we collectively bring a tremendous amount of experience to this. Not that we weren't experienced then, but like anybody else who's been doing the same thing for 18 years, we'd like to think that we're bringing you today a whole lot more knowledge, a whole lot more tools and a whole lot more enforcement, if you will. But we don't see the same scenario occurring that took place, okay? With respect to our fees, we think we're really good at what we do, and I don't know how people chose to price what they priced, but we know what it costs us to do what we do. We could spend the rest of the night talking about how important pre-construction is, so that's not lost on us. We wouldn't be standing in front of you with 133 districts if we weren't really good at setting the table for what happens during the construction phase. So I'm happy that we're saving the district money, but that's not to say we're shortchanging the district with respect to the service you're going to get from the people standing in front of you here and the back office support that we have to support them to do what we need to do. We've done too much of this to jeopardize our experience and our resume to shortchange you. So, I mean, I don't know if that sounds defensive, but that's the reality. We're really good at what we do.
Thank you. Other questions?
Is it possible that because you know that you're working with Spiesel and they are a K-12, that does help your Kathy's pre-construction work because she knows what she's working with? When you know that you're working with a K-12, they already have that that mindset. So it's I guess a known entity for one. Number two, your construction team with the technology that you didn't have 18 years ago, and the visibility of tracking, I would think is going to help. As with any project, you're going to have a lot of plates spinning, but it sounds like you're all in tandem as far as utilizing technology and visibility and transparency. And it sounds like you got your ace in the back that's going to be your hound dog back there to just kind of track that down. We do use that same badge system. Our badge system actually times out after 24 hours. It bleeds through, so that is just one other thing, one other trick that machine can do.
Okay.
But that is a current, like Kathy said, that is a current school wide used piece of equipment, and I do think that's something that is very positive, something they don't have to do, but I'm pretty encouraged by the fact that they would want to do that on site. So it just shows a good accommodation for the children that we're protecting. So thank you.
And Evelyn, to your point, yes, we've been working consistently with Spiesel for the last several years. So to the degree that we are comfortable already with their document preparation, process, knowledge base, front end, et cetera, it does make our life considerably easier. And Kathy has been the one to work with them over the last several years in Hamilton. So, and then, on a mix of project sizes and types akin to what you all have here.
And the only thing I would add quickly to your point is, as Joel mentioned, it's been 18 years since then. 18 years since that point, I can assure you that everybody standing here has 18 years worth of more experience on this type of building. I can assure you.
Except for Garrett.
Except for him, sorry.
Because he was 12.
Even 10.
All right, maybe these four. And I can assure you that that gentleman over there and his firm has 18 more years' experience on this building type. I can assure you that other firm has none.
Well, I only have half that on chair facilities, but I can say that I'm pretty much frothing at what I'm hearing. So I'm very positive at what I'm seeing. I was not on the committee. This is my only exposure and what we got. But I absolutely think it was more than fair for Dan to bring forward what he did, because I think that's a very fair a very fair concern, and I think something this board really needs to consider. And it's like, how are you going to do it better this time? But I'm satisfied.
Thanks. And I was actually going to just suggest very, very quickly, because this was an issue that the evaluation committee spent a lot of time talking about after the interviews. And so I want to give an opportunity to any other member of the evaluation committee to say anything else they'd want to. And I just wanted to point out that the statement from the previous superintendent was in a letter of support that was written back in 2008 for EPIC. So, you know, the superintendent was very upfront with the fact that there were problems with the high school, not with the other parts of the referendum, but with the high school. But the letter then goes on to say that the site manager from EPIC was steady, knowledgeable, and cooperative, and for 4 years held a good working relationship with our facilities director, high school administration, and members of our board. EPIC's central administrator was clear, demanding, and responsive at every turn. EPIC's owners were accessible and always in touch with the progress and challenges of the project. We found EPIC to be a reliable, trustworthy, and resourceful firm with which to conduct business. Our business administrator, facilities director, and I stand willing to speak with you should you have further questions or need more information. And thankfully, when we as an evaluation committee met, we still have 2 of those 3 individuals who are working with us and had the perspective of being there and still being here. So this was something we did spend a lot of time on, and that's why if any other member of the evaluation committee would like to say anything about it, because I know we've had inquiries from the public, I think now might be a good opportunity.
Just a question. Is now the time we would talk about how we feel about EPIC, or is that later at the time now?
Only if it's good.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to say it.
We got to get him outside.
So I'd love to share my perspectives from that meeting. It won't be super brief, but it also won't be too long. Yeah, I'll look over at you. I thought it was great that we were, first of all, the 4 firms that came, I think were all great. I think we were very fortunate to have those firms bid, and that this was an opportunity to choose the best from among a good group of construction managers who all have significant experience in the state with schools. None as much as EPIC. EPIC is the one with the most experience. And if I'm getting a medical procedure, I like the fact that I'm going to someone who does something often and is trusted, and where the word of mouth is so positive that they get all of that business. So that was very comforting for me. I am also very comforted by the fact that they're the most experienced firm working in this town by far. Having worked at the university for a decade, and I'll say more about that in a moment, means that they're familiar with our town staff, the engineers, the planners, even the police. And that's very, very important to have a smooth project, the things we don't always think about. I love the way that they plan to use technology and their focus on transparency and clear communication. And I think you heard tonight what made them so impressive in the presentations was just how clear they are and just how competent they are across the board. They were the firm that brought the largest number of people, and I found them to be the most impressive up and down the line in terms of what we were looking for. And I really do think we're getting the best construction manager that money can buy. Without question, they were the best prepared for the presentations. I think you saw some of that in the presentation. They clearly spent a lot of time preparing. They understood the multiple sites and the potential challenges of deliveries and workers' vehicles, especially during the busy times of the day, the drop-offs and the pickup times. And they had good ideas about how to manage those logistics. I love the fact that they will offer the TPAS system if we choose to use that. I think that some of us saw another presentation on TPAS, which was very, very powerful tool for guest management. The references. Stephanie spent a lot of time checking references, both on-list references, the people that EPIC suggested we might talk to, as well as people who were not on their list. And they all came back very positive. I was particularly pleased that they are held in such high regard by the university. In my time in the administration there, I spent 5 years on the university's facilities planning group, which is the senior administrative group that oversees all new construction, renovations, maintenance, and accessibility work. And I know how rigorous the university is in their management of projects and their selection of construction managers. And not only has the university used EPIC on multiple projects, they have them on their BOE list, which is a basic ordering agreement, which sounds trivial, but it really gives them a much higher level of autonomy, and it's not something the university does lightly. It's sort of like a giant merit badge that says you're welcome to work here and we trust you. Additional factors, I thought it was great that 2 members of the team live here and that their daughter is a proud Princeton High School grad. I think it makes them even more accountable than they otherwise would be. And lastly, from a governance perspective, I was pleased to be included in the process and feel that it was a good and very thorough process. I also believe that as a board member, I need to respect the judgment of our superintendent and the superintendent's team. And they're unanimous in making a very strong and positive recommendation that we hire EPIC. And I'm happy that 3 of the other facilities committee members who were there shared that strong level of enthusiasm. So I'm delighted that you're here, and I hope that we all get the great benefit of the excellent work that we hope you and know you will provide in the years to come.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
That's a lot of pressure.
I have a question. How many of you worked on the referendum back in 2001 of the group here?
Only me.
Just you?
I mean, I was here. I wasn't physically involved, but I was part of it. Plenty of meetings along the way.
Okay. So, Brian, I want to disagree with kind of where you match us with Princeton University. I feel Princeton University, they dig a hole, they don't like it, they cover it up, they dig another one, and they use a lot of money. Our funds are very, very different, and we can't spend any more than, we've been approved by the town. So, the town? State?
I think the state approves it.
Oh, the town approved it, yeah. So it's hard when you bring up the university because we're so different in terms. So to me, that's not like a positive part in terms of going forward. One thing I'm still looking for, kind of from the facilities group, is what did you not like about the other 3? I've asked that a couple times and I really haven't gotten any answers. So, yeah, your presentation was beautiful, but I'm really curious what the others didn't have. Yeah. I've asked for it in email, I've never gotten it, so I don't know where to get it.
I defer to Stephanie, but I also was very careful about the information that was shared out to the rest of the board because the conversation has to be in public right now, but it was a closed session. And I know that this came up. The reason why it was closed was that if it had been open, it would have meant that we, as the evaluation committee, couldn't negotiate any contract issues or even speak to it. And so we were advised by our construction council that not only was it something that wasn't normally done, but second of all, we would be hurting our flexibility in going forward. So I also feel like, I think we heard that all 4 firms were very good. So it's not a question of what was wrong with them. It was just that the majority of the evaluation committee felt that it was our task to recommend to the full board who we thought was the best candidate, and the majority of the evaluation committee thought that EPIC was the best candidate.
So how, as a member of the board, am I to decide if I would approve or not knowing, and I read, through their RFPs, so how am I to know what you didn't like about them? Like, I don't know how that gets shared. And it's frustrating because I can't make a decision because I don't know about everybody, and I've asked in email, so I don't know how to do it.
As a member of the board who's not on that committee, I just want to appreciate the work of the committee in doing that evaluation, and I feel like my role as a member of the board is to trust the work of the committee to have brought forward the information that we need to be able to make a decision, and so I appreciate the work of the committee in giving us that perspective.
Yes, I appreciate that. But again, as a member of the board, how am I supposed to go forward to approve if?
I think.
But I need to know more information.
I hear you, Debbie. I think, I mean, I was on the committee as well, and I am comfortable saying that we were given, again, we got materials from 4 different firms. We looked at them, we went into the meetings, and we had questions of all of them. And I had to say that coming in, and I'll share that my preconception coming into the meeting was it would be much easier not to pick Epic. Because when I realized Epic was involved in the last job, I thought, oh, if that's going to be optically difficult, we'll have a lot more to explain. But then when I heard the 4 presentations, there was no question. And so I said to myself, you know, I have a fiduciary duty to pick the best firm for us right now. And for me, there was just no questions, hands down. And Epic came in and had looked at our RFP and didn't just kind of come back to us and tell us what we had asked for, which could have happened from other firms. They came in and said, we've evaluated the things that you need to do, and here's the things we're concerned about in terms of timing and how you're going to get it done, and here's what we need to decide first. And by the way, you're going to have to bring an I-beam through the roof of the gym because you're putting a second floor on, and that's a very tricky thing to do, and we've done it in 2 other schools, and we know exactly how to do it, but we want to flag it up front to tell you that that's a kind of a unique aspect of what you're proposing to do. So they came in and they knew everything that we wanted them to do. They didn't recite it back to us. They actually analyzed it and gave us their impressions of where we would have to start, because frankly, in order to get this work done this summer, any of it, we have to start immediately. And so I feel like if we bring these guys on, they will be off to the races with us next week, and we may have a chance of actually getting some of this work done. My concern is with the other firms, they didn't seem to be as on top of it, as interested in working with us, as eager for it, had spent as much time. They didn't bring their teams. And I'm comfortable saying that in public because I don't think it's maligning anyone. I think it's just the objective truth about what was presented to us. So personally, as a member of the team, I was very comfortable with our recommendation, and there was a distinct difference. And it would be easier for me just to say, oh, yes, Epic was involved before, let's not use them, but I can't do that. So that's where I am. Are there any other questions from the board? And then I'd like to open it up, if we can, to the public for a short period of time. And I'm also sensitive that we have our social studies teachers here to present, and we've got so much to do tonight, and we'd like to get through this issue, which is really important. Are there any other board questions? If there are no board questions, I would like to open it up to the public, maybe for, you know, if we could do 5 to 10 minutes, or are there people who want to speak to this and ask questions while Epic is here? Gentleman in the back, is that?
Yeah.
They come to the podium. And when you come, please state your name and residence.
Sure. Hi. My name is Mark Frieda. I live on Fisher Avenue here in Princeton. Thanks for the opportunity to talk. I've been making notes in the back, so I'll keep it quick. A couple things. I think we need to learn from the past, especially the last referendum and what happened during that one. That wasn't 18 years ago. It was more like 10 years ago. And the problems were at more than just the high school. There were significant problems at all the other schools. We had problems that there was a child from Community Park that actually went to the hospital due to a reaction to vapors from it was either roofing adhesive or the waterproofing they were doing. But there were similar problems in all the elementary schools. So, I mean, I think Epic at some point turned around, but their initial problems were significant. Being familiar with this field, I would say they were probably inexcusable, and they placed the then school board at a tremendous risk of liability, and it endangered the health of our students. And I think it was only the public uproar that was created by those lapses that caused them to turn around. Maybe they're better today. I don't know. But I think it's important that you all walk into this fully aware of what happened. There were serious, serious problems. I'm concerned that your process, from what I know and what I've read, might not be the best process, in that if you're relying on the CM to really be your eyes and ears, that's not the best thing. You need someone from the school system to be with them every day, whether it's a Gary or a Stephanie, somebody that has long-term experience, breadth of knowledge through the entire school system, and can say to them, well, you guys don't know about this, I get it, because you're our construction manager, you haven't been in the school system for the last 15 or 20 years, but you need to be aware of this, that, or the other thing. Without that kind of person on your team, you're going to have problems between the CM and the architect, and who's going to step in and correct those or make sure they go the right way. So I think your process going forward is more important than whether it's EPIC or not. I have serious concerns about EPIC, but I think your process might be flawed, and you really need to pay more attention to that. And I am hopeful that some people on the board have said there'll be more public participation going forward, and I hope you take advantage of that. And there's a lot of people in this community that could help you with this process. So I hope that's a real effort on the board's part to make sure those people get involved, or at least have the opportunity to. And my last point is, hey, it'd be great to start this work in June, but if it's just not going to happen, don't rush it. Your biggest mistake on this type of work is rushing these things. If you don't have the schedule and you don't have all the prep work done, don't. Wait till next year. 10 years from now, nobody's going to remember when you started, but they are going to remember how well this did or didn't go. One of the biggest problems with the last referendum is they ran out of money, they ran out of time. You stole, the then school board stole money from the maintenance budget for years after that referendum was done and spent, and created a whole bunch of problems that lingered for years. So let's not repeat those mistakes, but thanks for listening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Kip Cherry, 24 Dempsey. As a follow-up to some other comments I've made, I just want to really make things very clear. I'm concerned that you're expecting more from the CM than a CM can deliver, and I think that you're choosing the wrong firm. And no matter how accommodating EPIC might have been during your evaluation of them, or how seemingly capable, I recommend against them because of the history on the previous referendum. Whatever recommendations they might have from previous PPS administrations, and no matter how helpful they have been after the projects went bad, they failed to report convincingly to the BOE at that time that the quality of the plans and specs prepared for the previous referendum were unacceptable, and they failed to take remedial action. And they had many opportunities to do this. During the constructability review, they should have expressed some concern about the plans and specs. As bids came in and they compared them with the cost estimates, they should have sounded the alarm. As the spread between the bids for the same work became apparent, as each bidder filled gaps with different assumptions that should have been sounding, creating alarm bells. And there were change orders, many change orders. There should not have been a lot of change orders. We always aim for zero. There are always a few more than zero, but this thing got out of control. And now going back to the same CM really boggles my mind. And remember, it's not just the team that you're getting from the firm. It's the firm's policies overall, their administration techniques, why things happened that they didn't catch and report and remediate. To remind you about the previous referendum, the cost overrun was $6.74 million, almost $7 million. The contractor then sued for almost $11 million, claiming costs incurred as a result of project delays and labor inefficiencies caused by errors and omissions. PPS then had to pay out to the contractors $4.6 million to settle the claim. PPS then sued the architect for that amount, plus $24 million in damages. I don't know what the final settlement was. I'm not sure it was ever provided publicly, and I don't know whether you all know. But that is a concern that I think you should be researching. I'm also concerned about the lack of transparency in the selection process. There never was an open discussion on the scope of the CM. And again, I think you're putting too much emphasis on the CM to handle change orders. I don't buy the reason that the BOE was doing some negotiating during the first interview process. Normally in interviews, everyone gives a presentation and they all receive the same sorts of questions. There really shouldn't be any negotiations going on during that process, and there's no reason why the public shouldn't have sat in. Furthermore, there was no information to members of the community on the criteria for selection, no input from the public on that, and we were not permitted to review the submissions. In other words, the spirit of transparency that had been established since the referendum was passed seems to have hit a dead end. And I have to say I was rather shocked when you all brought in an attorney to handle change orders. I thought that was really, again, jumping the gun. We don't want change orders. We want good plans and specs, so we don't need change orders. Finally, in light of your selection process and the recommendation, my concern is that you're heading down the same road as we went down before. I hope you look hard at bringing in an owner's rep to oversee the referendum projects, but I also hope that you will choose a CM that does not have the record that EPIC has had with the previous referendum. I'm sure that there are other candidates that are better equipped to be the CM for our new referendum. Thanks, and I'll answer any questions too.
Thanks, Kip. Greg, do you want to just quickly speak to the record on the litigation numbers? We did do some research. We actually had our law firm who represented us in those lawsuits kind of go back to their files and check on the numbers. So because I think there were a number of articles in the press, including some that you gave to us that had numbers that were wildly inaccurate in terms of numbers of claims, size of claims, of magnitude. But there were definitely, there was litigation and we wanted to know what it was. And I think, Greg, do you have the numbers in front of you?
I do, and thank you to everyone who raised the issue, and so we tried to do a little bit more due diligence. So all members of the board actually received a memo from our construction council as to some of the background of some of the issues in the 2001 referendum. So, and you know, I know that our board secretary and business administrator will check me if I make any state anything that's off, but basically our construction council went back through the records and found that the issues that were litigated were all at the high school. The project had experienced delays that were due to the architect at the time. The claim was settlement was reached and approved for $4.6 million, as we heard, for the general contractor, and then the board, the district and the board did make a claim against the architect, and that was settled for $1.7 million, right?
There was a $1.45 million settlement in the district's favor from the architect Hillier Group, and then there was another $250,000 that was paid to the district from the engineers, which was paid over time. And of the money that the district paid out, there was a $3.7 million settlement. $3 million came from the state development funds, and 1.6 was paid out for 5 years. So there was a number of payments back and forth. Clearly, there were issues. None of us, we're happy to know about that and discuss it. And so, thank you for bringing it up again, so that we could review it. And your questions and your letters to us did remind us that we should check the facts, and we did. So I think we're aware of what happened last time, as much as we can be, given when it was. And so, are there any other questions from the public that anyone wants to say something? Dr. Sharma?
Thank you. And actually, I'd like to go back to last year, and a great job you guys did. Instead of putting the whole referendum, you guys did a great job. And thanks to Patrick and people who served before you. And I also like to congratulate you for hard work, and I'm proud of you. And all the things that Brian, Daniel, and everybody else mentioned, and also Kip and the public. But I like to kind of say that let's do a fantastic job. And the fantastic job, we cannot blame CM, we cannot blame the architects, the buck stops here. And the buck stops here means you, as public representative, are the program managers and project managers. Somebody brought a point that let's not rush. Let's have a project plan, and I mentioned that last year, and Patrick used to say, well, it's not a satellite. I worked on a satellite program worth $865 million. And we knew from day one what the specifications were, what the schedule were, each subcontractor, what their responsibilities are. Those were specified in a project plan, and I like to see that. We cannot blame them. They are your subcontractors. Who at the board is the project manager? There should be a project manager from board of directors, is somebody who works not whenever the work starts, whenever the construction is. The person has to work 7 days, 24 hours, and I know what that means. I know that. They cannot work 24/7. Whoever that person is has to work that. When they are not working, he's still working, or she is still working. We need that person. I don't know who that person is. Please, I'd be glad to help, and I'm sure people will be glad to help. Have a project plan. Have a project manager from Board of Education. Somebody who reports to the super. Somebody who reports to the board. They're not going to be working 24/7, not every day. That person will be working. We don't know who that person is. Somebody brought it up. I wanted to emphasize that we need that. That's the person who will make it successful, not them. They're your subcontractors. They will blame the architects. They will blame the other. But that person will be responsible for everything. He will be responsible to the public, not them. I'm glad there are two of them are here who live in, they understand that. But the person who get paid from you, paid from the public, is the one that you need. I really, and I mean that. Yeah. We don't have that. I don't see that person. Dr. Cochran can't be that person.
Thank you.
Beth can't be that person.
Thank you, Dr.
But somebody has to be. So the other couple of other points, I understand they have a lot of experience, which is great. Princeton University has a lot of experience, I worked with them, become on the municipality committee. The people that they have underneath, unbelievable. We don't. But we can afford whatever it takes to have a project manager who will work 24/7. Please, listen.
Yeah.
We'll be glad to help you. Let's not rush.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
This is kind of turned into our public comment session, right? And that's fine. But everyone's going to be limited to 2 minutes, and we need to keep moving because we do have a lot more work to do. So we'll take another comment.
Thank you. My name is Paula Jackalou. I'm a teacher at the high school, and I've been here for a little over a quarter of a century. So I was here when the construction went on last time. I had originally planned on making some other comments, but I'd rather stick right to what's being discussed right now. So I'd like to comment on a couple of things. I'm impressed with hearing about, keeping the work site clean. I'm concerned about what happened with, I shouldn't say the name of the other builder, right? Should I not use names?
It's
or
public.
Should I go,
it's
boop,
public. That's okay.
So there was this other construction company, 4 letters, boop. They were a mess. As science teachers, we met several times in our department. The only people that are here today that I know of that were there then is probably Bob Carell, Linda Morris, and myself. And we pointed out to them problems early on that we saw with blueprints. We saw that, first of all, we didn't have enough classrooms. Now we're looking at space concerns. We saw that the sinks were too small, numerous other things. And I think the problem was communication, where we were pointing things out, and I don't think it ever made it to the people that it was supposed to make it to. In addition to that, somebody had snapped a photo of the greenhouse floor, the concrete pad that was poured. And you could see that in the rain, it wasn't draining. And for some reason, the drain there, as well as in the classrooms was at a higher point for some reason rather than the lower point. That's caused a lot of problems over the year with maintenance at the high school and with damage. So I think the key here is whatever you guys decide, there has to be more of a seamless communication. And people need to bring to the table the people that are actually going to live and work in these classrooms, the teachers. We can tell you a lot about what happens. As far as the flooding at the high school, I was present in that meeting with Tim Anderson. We met with Hillier, and we pointed out, by the way, let me just talk a little bit about this very quickly. That retention basin was actually a student project that started as part of our construction curriculum. It was one of my students. He worked on it for a solid year, worked with all sorts of professionals throughout central New Jersey, including Pinelands Nursery, who helped us with the plants. When we met with Hillier, we pointed out to them that we were very concerned about the basin's ability to hold on to stormwater if we had 6, maybe 8 inches of rain or more. We were disregarded. And we said, what happens if we get more than 8 inches? That'll never happen. Well, we see the result. I have, over the years, proposed a very solid means of solving the problem, which involves lowering the road, but also rider college, if that's still the proper terminology of the name of the real estate across the street on Walnut Lane. They need to drop it as well. And if they did, if we got a heavy storm event, the water would be able to drain. I know this from experience because having grown up on the Lamington River, that is the plan that we have arranged with Somerset County, and it is the reason why the house that I grew up in never floods, is because we have the same fail-safe mechanism. And it wouldn't require, I think, a re-engineering. It just requires letting the water drain. So anyway, I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Go ahead.
I'll be super quick. I was not planning to say anything tonight because, like a lot of parents of elementary school kids, we have not been paying very close attention. We voted on this in December and just assumed everything was moving along. So I just want to say that I totally trust your judgment. I know you're working really hard, and the parents of kids in schools trust your judgment, and they think this is done and we have to move on to the next thing. And they think by next September, their kids are going to be coming back to schools with air conditioning.
Yes.
I really, really want to make that clear. It's really hot in New Jersey in the summer and extremely humid, and the mold this year was horrendous. So I trust you to make an expeditious decision and move along. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Yeah.
I will be brief. My name's Peter Madison. I'm a 40-year resident of Snowden Lane. I've sent all of you comments the other day. Which I will not reiterate. I worked for 5 years as a project manager for the New Jersey School Development Authority. I built schools in K through 8 and high schools in Elizabeth, Long Branch, and Egg Harbor Township, so I think I know a few things about construction and management. Essentially, I acted as the owner's rep for the SDA in managing the architect, the construction managers, the contractors, and the school districts. So, I managed a project in Elizabeth where Ernest Bach was the contractor. And he and they, any astute public works contractors, are sharks. And they will find change orders before they even submit their bid to you. And they will require, during construction, exact contract compliance. And if you do not comply with every letter of that contract, you will be nailed with extended general conditions and whatever else they can throw at you. So, you may think that the architect and CM are going to represent the school district's interest. My experience in the 5 years I was there is that all the parties will act to minimize their exposure, not yours, to a claim. So the architect, if necessary, will, when he looks at change orders, will describe them in such a way that it takes away any errors or omissions from him. And any settlement you get from errors and omissions will be just that, a settlement. You will not get all your money back. It's all negotiated. So how do you protect yourself and hold others accountable? And that's the key, holding people accountable. 1, thorough plans and specs review by the architect and CM before the documents are issued for a bid. It's critical that those things are pored over. Secondly, both parties, i.e. the architect and the CM, acknowledge to you that they have thoroughly reviewed the plans and existing conditions and they have financial responsibility for errors and omissions that were evident in the bid document. So they can't go back and say, oh, gee, I missed that, I'm sorry. No, you acknowledge that you saw those. Third, thorough review, and this is compliance with the contract, which should be based on AIA documents preferably. The compliance is, again, following every step and item in the contract, the legal contract, not only worrying about what's going on in the field. Again, that's to protect you from potentially being protected. Fourth, I acted as the owner's representative for the SDA, and you might want to think about hiring an owner's rep. Now, very briefly, scheduling. It is at 10, well, it's not yet, but in your process, you are at 10 o'clock. You are very late in the process for construction documents, bidding, review, contracts, permits, and start of any work, if you expect to commence on June 20th. So rushing this process will result in mistakes. My recommendation, determine which work can be done during the school year and concentrate on those, because you're not going to finish work started in June 20th and have it finished by September 1st, as somebody just raised the point. And secondly, any work that has to be done strictly over summer recess, plan that for 2020, because you're not going to make it this year. It's too late. But thank you for giving me the opportunity to make these comments.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. I think this is, maybe would conclude, this is our public comment effectively, because we've got so much to do tonight. This is our first public comment on agenda items, so we're going to conclude that. And I think, can I have a motion to move forward? I think I'd like to get us through this item so we can move on with our agenda. So can I have a motion to move this towards a vote? Are we ready? Brian? Yes? Second? Bill? All right. I think we should take a voice roll call here so it's clear how we're voting. And Bill was the second.
Beth Barron.
Yes.
Debbie Braunfeld.
No.
Daniel Dart.
No.
Jessica Deutsch.
Yes.
Bill Hare.
Abstain.
Betsy Calver-Baglio.
Yes.
Brian McDonald.
Yes.
Gregory Stankiewicz.
Yes.
Michelle Tuck-Ponder.
Yes.
And Evelyn Spahn.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you to the public for all your involvement in this, and we do appreciate. We've received a lot of very detailed correspondence, and people have taken a great deal of time, and we do appreciate your efforts, and it is helpful to us, and so thank you. And I want to thank EPIC for coming here tonight and for making that presentation and for sitting through all of this and hearing our concerns and our questions, and this is going to be an ongoing relationship that we have going forward. And Greg, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, as we heard before, it's a four-legged stool. It is a partnership. We're very much looking forward to having you as a partner at the table, and we're very much looking forward to starting tomorrow, having you guide us through the pre-construction phase, so that we can move expeditiously but well, move forward with the plans that the community entrusted to us. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you all. Okay, continue. All right, thanks. Thanks and good night to you. And we're going to get to our long-suffering social studies teachers back there. Sorry about that. We've got two quick things to get through before we get to Mr. Cochran's renounce. We've got to do the board goals quickly. Sure. These are just two items that we have. We've given people copies, and we have attached to our agenda the goals that we have agreed for the rest of the year, and I don't want to take a lot of time there. They are attached to our agenda. Could I have a motion that we move on this item? This is item 2 of E2. Bill, and a second, Jess. Is there any discussion?
Is there any way to put them on the screen at this point, or is that just so that the public can see?
I will briefly, shall I briefly read them? We have 3 board goals, and that is, 1 is the refinement of board governance with an emphasis on the development of processes, policies.
Sorry.
One more.
E2.
E2. There you go. Right there. So the first one is, again, governance. Refinement of board governance with an emphasis on the development of processes, policies, and procedures that enhance strategic focus, communication, transparency, impact, and board effectiveness. 2, leading with values that reflect our district's vision, communicating and engaging with the public to address existing and future PPS needs. 3, advocating at the state level for legislative actions that could enhance our district's ability to provide the highest quality education to all PPS students while maintaining affordability as a key to the preservation of diversity. So these are the 3 goals that we talked about at our retreat when we got together and went over these, and we'd like to have these and adopt them moving forward. Is there any discussion?
I would just add one thing we discussed at that
meeting was that all of these goals are in the service of our students.
Yes, thank you.
So the improving the experience of the students in the Princeton Public Schools is why we're here. And so these goals may look far from student work, but we are all working toward that. I would like to actually see that spelled out a little more specifically in these goals. I'm not sure if it's an overarching statement, but to me that's really critical in what we do.
Thank you, Ms. Baglio. I would suggest that perhaps when we put this on our website, it's going to be there in connection with our mission and our goals, and it's in that context. Perhaps we can have a way of presenting it that's very closely linked. I think that's a really good point. Thank you. Is there any other comment?
And it's clear that the superintendent's goals go through the end of this school year, so June 30th.
Yeah, yeah, they coincide.
And the board's goals, it appears for all of year 2019.
I think we'll have a retreat in July when we'll talk about that, and we can either update or change these, and then the superintendent's goals will be redone for the next year.
So my one comment is to have both quantitative and qualitative goals. Some metrics that we can measure, including financial metrics.
Yeah.
You know, how do we measure student achievement? How do we measure equity? How do we measure the various things? How do we measure the success of the referendum?
Yeah.
Both qualitative and quantitative
Thank
metrics.
you. Yep, it's important. And I think we all acknowledge that we would like to spend more time on these things, and in July we will have more time to do that. We were coming at these at the middle of the year, kind of with our new board, so we just kind of wanted to put some pegs on the wall to say this is where we are right now, but I agree with you, and I think we talked a little bit about that together. Thank you. Any other comments? Can I have a motion? Oh, we have a motion. So then we move forward to a vote. Thank you. And do we want to do a show of hands? Okay, show of hands in favor of adopting the goals. Thanks, unanimous. Motion carried. Thank you. Mr. Superintendent, it's your turn.
Okay. Gabe, can you pull up the superintendent's goals? These are ones that flow from our mission and values and strategic plan goals. The focus for this year, I have 3 areas that I'm excited to be working on, and excited to be working on collaboratively with the board and with my administrative team. The first one is really the most important work that we do, and it's around advancing equity in the service of student achievement. That goal is broken into, can you scroll down a little bit, Gabe? A little bit more. Yeah, keep going. So goal 1, advancing equity. We're taking a look at a implementation of a district-wide approach to restorative justice. That's a shift in thinking, a shift in philosophy, where instead of focusing on strictly on rules, we're focusing on relationships. And when rules are broken, there are consequences. When relationships are broken, there may be consequences, but there's also a process of restoration. And the importance of the focus on restorative justice is consistent with the recommendations that have come from our equity audit, and really focused primarily on building a strong sense of community. So excited to begin that one. We're already well on our way with this one. The second component of this is the focus on equity through diverse learners. That's B. This is the second year of a 3-year goal, where we're taking a look at, and I'm working collaboratively with Annie, our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction, as well as with Mickey, our Director of Student Services, to take a look at how we can enhance instruction for our special needs students and enhance compliance. So it's professional development for our teachers. And then the third component of this first goal is the Gifted and Talented Program Review. We review all of our programs internally, and the G&T program review is one that Annie Kosick is engaged in right now. And what's exciting about this work is that we're really looking at gifted and talented, which is the state's term for the program, but this idea of enrichment through the lens of equity. So how can we create district-wide, school-wide enrichment that reaches every single student and uplifts every single student? So that's exciting work under the umbrella of equity. We've talked a lot about the implementation, oversight, and communication around the referendum, so I'll be looking forward to collaborating with the board in that role. And then the last goal sort of speaks a little bit to what you were talking about, Dan, and it has to do with sort of the fiscal challenges that we face. And it's a challenge that really gets greater for us progressively every year. You know, how do we enhance learning for a growing number of students and enhance our programs for those students in an environment that's increasingly restricted in terms of resources. We want to be able to maintain a really high quality educational program and limit that impact on taxpayers. And so that's the challenge. How do we do more with less? And so there's some specific elements that the board and I will be working on to focus on that kind of work, including shared services with the town as one example. So that's it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there any, can I have a motion? We need a motion for this one. Brian? Second, Bill, thank you. Is there any discussion? Can we move forward to approve with a show of hands? I think we're unanimous on that. Motion passed. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to the superintendent's report.
Oh, well,
keep talking.
I'm just going to keep going.
Keep going.
So, and actually, I'm going to take my time and really turn it over to our social studies program review. There are two kinds of school districts. There are those who strive to maintain a status quo, and there are those who are always striving to get better. And the process we have for doing a review of every single one of our academic programs puts the Princeton Public Schools squarely in the category of the second. We're always striving to do better. We have had an internal social studies review in the last few years. We've done that internally, and then we've had an external review where we've brought in partners from outside, critical friends, so to speak, who can help us take a look at our work. Tim Charleston, our K-8 supervisor of global studies, has been instrumental in facilitating both the internal and the external review in his time here. He's joined tonight by Stephanie Greenberg, who is our new 9 through 12 humanities supervisor. We were thrilled to hire her this year, and I'm grateful for you to staying late tonight and joining Tim in a very quick presentation to the board and the public about the work that we've done in social studies. So I invite you guys to present, and I would ask the board and those listening tonight to sort of look at the work that we're doing in social studies, the teaching, the learning that's happening through that lens of equity, to see the kind of changes that we've made. So, Tim and Stephanie.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks to the board for allowing us to present, and to the public. This is really interesting because here we are at a board meeting. This is one of the foundations of a civic democracy. Whether or not we all agree or not, I'm going to leave that unsaid. But this is social studies is a really important piece in what we do as educators and as public institutions. It's one of the foundations of what we provide to our kids. We have some goals for our presentation. As Steve mentioned, they're doing a G&T review now. I have the distinct honor of saying that social studies was the first program to be reviewed internally, thorough a review. It lasted the entire year. So I just want to quickly just share the goals. I do need to trim down my 148 slide presentation to a measurable piece. I know you want us to move quick, but we're social studies teachers by nature, so we tend to maybe talk a lot. Share the profile of what the social studies program is, revisit our internal review, reflect upon those experiences, give an update of where we were from our external review, and then give a little bit of a roadmap for the future, what we're doing now, what we're going to continue to do. So like I said, I'm Tim Charleston.
Hi, I'm Steph Greenberg. As Steve mentioned, I am thrilled to be here for the first time. I am in month 3 now. So yes, so I know a lot more than I knew 3 months ago, but I still have a lot more to learn. And everything that we'll be discussing tonight occurred prior to my arrival. So I will be here to throw 2 or 1 cent in and to field any questions if they come up. But I'm grateful to Tim for presenting primarily.
And I want to say, I want to be give credit to where credit's due. Mark Shelley, the previous humanities supervisor, is now the current principal at Riverside, and John Anagbo, who's the previous humanities supervisor before Mark, also played an instrumental role in these reviews as well. Our program philosophy. We took the Princeton Public School mission statement, and as we created our internal review, we crafted our program philosophy to reflect that, but also be unique to social studies, to focus on empowering and equipping empathetic local, national, and global citizens, but while doing it through inquiry, research, and analysis, which are some of the cornerstones of a social studies program. We went through an internal review in the school years of 2015 to 2016. We had about 30 people on that review, many different departments, not just social studies, special education, English. We had a huge cohort of teachers from Cranberry represented on this. We wanted to be thoughtful and provide recommendations and commendations in those 5 areas. We used a microscope telescope approach of looking very intently on the practices that we did and that had been doing, and looking at things from a broader national framework. What's going on in trends in social studies? How can we better equip our students to handle these issues, to look at inquiry? Just our scope and sequence. We use an expanding horizons approach for our elementary school. I have a first grader, and last year she was in kindergarten, and yes, everything was about her and her world. So we focus on what is known to students and approach it from there. Our middle school program is unique. We are one of the only middle schools in the state of New Jersey that focuses 2 years on world history, which is something I think should be applauded. And we also have a year of civics and government in modern U.S., which again is very unique in New Jersey. Not many schools have a program just for civics.
And then at the 9 to 12 level, we meet state requirements with 2 years of U.S. history. Sophomore year students can choose between either U.S. History 2 or AP U.S. History. And then a 3rd year of World History or AP World History junior year, and then a slew of wonderful electives available for seniors, ranging from additional AP courses, AP European History or AP Government and Politics. We have regional electives available to students who are interested in concentrating upon just Latin America or just Russia and the former Soviet Union. We have a new racial literacy class, newish, that's available for students who are interested in issues of race and social justice. So that's what senior year looks like.
So after a year-long review, which was, we met numerous times and made recommendations for our own program, and that was a very hard thing to do. We had to look at ourselves with that scrutiny and saying, where are we and where do we really want to go? And with that in mind, we came up with a slew of recommendations in those 5 areas. Here are just, I think, a few of the ones that, to me and to the committee, were really the most important. Working on those transitions between middle school and high school was a big piece. Making sure that those skills that we're teaching in middle school are transferred, and there's not that deduplication and that there's that streamlined effort. Looking at our reading writing workshop model to present more diverse libraries and materials, including the adoption of a new program at the elementary school, Social Studies Alive, which is completely aligned to Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence theory, focuses on the C3 framework, and the C3 framework is about economics, geography, civics, and history, not just about one or the other. To give kids a well-rounded approach, it really is an amazing program. Consistently updating not only the state standards, but we in New Jersey, we also have mandates for specific key areas of Holocaust genocide education and homicide education, as well as a few others that were just recently passed of LBGT education that was recently just enacted. That will also be a part of something that will be taught in social studies classes. Then we looked at piloting humanities committee at the high school, increasing our Cranberry to JW cohorts, where we had teachers actually go to each school to actually coordinate and use best practices to see that are we preparing kids for the high school in the best manner. And to create common experiences for our kids K-8 at every grade level. That was a big piece. Field-based or site-based experiences for our students, enriching experiences, community-based experiences. And then as Stephanie was saying, brand new electives. Those were 2 electives that were chosen that the students helped to devise. We used student surveys and student information and feedback of what classes they wanted to see in the social studies program. And one of the biggest pieces that I want to just take a moment on was to think about this. This is something that we both believe in deeply, and our teachers do as well. But in our internal review, it was really powerful to hear from kids. They are the biggest piece in this. Whose history are we presenting? Are we presenting multiple perspectives? Are we presenting a history that allows them to have a full informed sense of humanity? Making sure that we have the best resources. Making sure that when our kids or teachers encounter resources that don't provide that we can encounter those and bring in resources or people or research that does allow for that. We heard from kids as young as 3rd grade, we teach Princeton history in 3rd grade, who said to an email to the Historical Society, because we used a post-hole approach to teaching history, which is 1787. And that's all they learned about Princeton was the year 1787. Nothing came before, nothing came after. We know Princeton has a rich history. She said in an email, and Izzy Kasdan, the executive director, shared it with me, did anybody in Princeton during that time look like me? And this was a young Latina girl who was asking a very valid question. So we've worked with the Historical Society to change that curriculum up to present Princeton throughout time and how Princeton has changed and the struggles of Princeton. And focus on professional development over the last few years on equity and culturally responsive teaching. How do you encounter those things, and what do you do as teachers and as students? Just wanted to give you guys a very quick snapshot of what's going on right now in social studies. So again, microscope, telescope approach, big picture, little picture.
Sure, and we can move really quickly through these. This is more for fun than for anything, but I just asked the social studies teachers at the high school, what are you guys up to this week? What are a couple highlights that we could share with the board? And the US 1 teacher, one of the US 1 teachers responded and was excited to share that students are researching and connecting the abolition and women's rights movements of the 1800s to movements today, such as end modern slavery and women's rights. US 2 students were excited to take part in a role play exercise to understand American isolationism on the eve of World War II from a more personal perspective. And teachers are also reporting some excitement around opportunities that are extended by block scheduling, such as the opportunity to do more extended in-class writing, in this case, to actually get through the writing process in one class period instead of chopping it off in the middle.
This is what I was speaking about before, the revised Princeton history. One of those pieces, again, those community partnerships are really big for us. Princeton Historical Society has played a huge role. Princeton Battlefield Society, Spirit of Princeton, the university, Dr. Ruha Benjamin, and many others have played a really big, important part because we needed an informed sense of what Princeton is. The kids actually, and Morven as well, they look at Shirley Satterfeld's amazing tour of Princeton, walking tour of Princeton through the experiences of African Americans in Princeton. One of the common experiences, this was just a couple of weeks ago, these are our 6th graders going to the Franklin Institute to see Viking warships. But again, it's not just to see the Vikings and their historical artifacts, but it's also they're asking bigger questions, answering bigger questions. What did it mean to have someone come over, and why did they come over? What was it like for those who were invaded by the Vikings? And asking those pretty important questions. So after that entire review, at the time, Steve said, you know what, Tim, you did such a great job with this internal review. Can you just do it again, but an external review? And of course, this is our immediate answer. Of course, we'd love to. Part of this is the external review is a really important piece because we are part of the Tri-State Consortium. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it is a group of like-minded peer schools in New Jersey, Connecticut, and New York who are critical friends, a critical friends model, who review each other's programs to make sure that it's of the highest quality, and they help us answer questions. They have a framework which they come in and do a review on a district. We've had 2 reviews before social studies in writing and also in music. So this review is important for social studies, and coming off the heels of an internal review, this review acted as a barometer, a status check. Where were we in our internal review? We said all these great things, but as outsiders, can you give us the perspective of are we actually saying and doing these things, or do we really need to redouble our efforts? These are the 8 metrics that they kind of sort of grade you or give you feedback on. I'm not going to go into each individual one. They're pretty self-explanatory. They also have a fishbowl consultancy at the end, which is a really unique approach. Again, I won't go too much into this, but if you've ever been in a room where other people are talking about you and you can hear them talk about you, that's what the fishbowl is. Magnify that by about 20 or 30 people. We had our visit team, and then they had a visit. We had our internal team, and then they had a visit team, and we were all on the PAC auditorium stage. And they were able to ask us as a team clarifying or probing questions. And then halfway through the fishbowl, they circled around in a smaller huddle and then talked about us as we weren't even in the room and our answers. It's a very awkward yet a satisfying procedure. Basically, it's a procedure, but it really gets you to be reflexive and reflective of who we were as a department and as a review team. So we prepared for 16 months for this visit. We wanted to make sure that we had evidence to support this visit. We weren't just giving them the internal review and just say, go for it. And we needed to create some essential questions to guide this visit team as well. This visit also helped to accreditate our high school for middle stage, which is really important as well, too. These were our essential questions that we came up with. Again, that barometer. Were we providing a consistent program, K-12, for our kids? Were we providing a curriculum that is student-centered, rigorous, authentic? Were we achieving our philosophy of preparing those global citizens? We had 20 educators come last May. We had 400 pieces of evidence that our team collected. I was thinking about bringing all 400, but they needed to be documented. And we got them, these were solicited by the teachers and by the team to put them in each one of those 8 bins. It was a laborious work, but it was also very insightful to see what we were doing and what our kids were experiencing. They were able to visit classrooms, speak with parents and kids, and visit over 50 classrooms. And then they gave us feedback. Again, feedback, we're consistently getting feedback to try to provide a better, more consistent program. Their feedback and commendations, again, streamlining them for everybody here. Some of the things that they were appreciative of in our program is that we do give consistent experiences for experiential learning. We do have systems in place to communicate with families. There was collaboration with local experts. Our kids score very well on AP scores, higher than the national average. And that we are, there's evidence that the district is continuing to try to provide equitable access to provide that full potential for responsible citizenship. The recommendations, we need to continue to work on some of our district-wide definitions. One of the areas that we wanted to focus on was metacognition, the thinking about your thinking. We need to provide some definitions, more clear definitions to some of our folks to help them wrestle with what that means for them as teachers and what that means for our students and how they can actually do it. Continue to revisit the 85% requirement at the AP level for courses at the high school. It's a prerequisite requirement of 85% in a prior class. It's a prior grade. A big one, and this is one that we debriefed about, are we a social studies program or are we a history program? that is geared more towards our secondary level. Are we presenting just history, or are we encompassing those other areas of civics, geography, economics? I think we do, but it's a question that we need to reflectively think about. Again, we need more professional development for our teachers to handle complex historical content and controversial content, historical and current day. Think about our program sequencing at the high school and consider continued ways to engage the community in this process about social studies. So where do we go from here? Taking our show on the road. This is one of the stops. One of the things that we need to continue to focus on as a department, and one of the things that Stephanie and I both believe in, is focusing on both the perspectives of our students and families within that dynamic. It's not just what's in the resources that we provide, but the experiences of both of those in what makes history history and what makes social studies social studies. We can't become empathetic, creative citizens if we can't listen to each other. Engage our learners in student-centered historical inquiries using sources, using research, facts. That's important. Student-centered inquiries is, many of you, and even I was, maybe we're taught in a very didactic, stand and deliver, all the history comes from this book. That's not what we want for our kids. We want our kids to be experiencing social studies through reading resources, through small group, through differentiation, through simulations, through discussion. And we're going to prepare for our next review. The 5-year review cycle comes back around after 5 years, and social studies is back up in 2021. We look forward to getting a status check on this. Tri-States will come back in the fall to give us some feedback of where we are based on their recommendations. I have to say we are really blessed with amazing teachers, but we're really blessed with amazing social studies teachers who help and really tackle these complex issues. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tim and Stephanie, for bringing us back to the teaching and learning and students. I think we're happier to be back there. So questions from the board?
One question. I know it's getting late. Thank you so much. That was a great presentation, and I learned a lot. So my question is about those state-mandated areas of study, Amistad, Holocaust education, the new LGBTQIA curriculum. How do you ensure consistency of that curriculum throughout our elementary schools? And so when they come to the middle school, everybody, I won't say they've learned the same thing, but if you say Amistad to any kid walking around the middle school or the Holocaust, they know what you're talking about.
Sure. It's multifaceted. It's in the curriculum. It's twofold. It's explicit and it's embedded. What I mean by that, we have reworked the past few years to focus our essential questions on changing the paradigm. It's not just this is a once a month sort of thing, but these are questions every unit and resources every unit that are embedded within our curricular units. So it's not just in one unit, they're in all of our units. And then that is the explicit too. We do want to make sure that we're bringing in experiences and resources at all of our levels. We bring in explicit professional development for our teachers. And we focused, last May, we brought in Larry Glazer, the executive director from the Holocaust Commission, to actually train all of our K-5 educators on what Holocaust education actually is. We plan to do the same with Amistad education, as the mandate as well, too. Those are bigger pieces. So yes, it's explicit and embedded, and we work through our resources, making sure that they address these sorts of things too.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I want to say thank you too, and I know. I guess I want to say how important I think it is that in every time I hear you do presentations like this, we hear about empathy and about facts, and I think the fact that you are you are instilling those in our children. We can never say how important that is in these times, and so I really appreciate hearing that every time you do this, and also the active engagement is really a part of what we talk about in terms of the vision in this district about joy and purpose, and so I really hear that in the way that you approach the work that you're doing. So I just want to thank you for that. Thank you.
I would also like to thank you. As Jess has had, I've seen this a few times before when you've presented a student achievement, and I really appreciate it every time. I mentioned to Steve earlier in the week that I always think of partnership when I think of the social studies department, both you two working together, the partnership of your teachers in developing new courses, the partnership with outside partners, the Historical Society of Princeton. You've done a lot of work to maintain those, and the connection between schools. I had a question when you mentioned Cranberry and JW. Have you reached out to Charter at all or had conversations with them, just out of curiosity?
No.
Perhaps in the future.
Perhaps in the future. At
Yeah.
the time when we were doing the internal review,
Yeah.
a different time, a different place, but it may be something that we look for.
Sure, absolutely. But what I want to say overall is your work has really impacted students. You've revised the curriculum so students see themselves. You've reached out to the community. You've given students the ability to suggest electives that are meaningful to them, and that's really powerful. You've created new field trips. Tim, you know I'm very grateful for the field trips for middle school students where we didn't previously have them in this area. And you have students in mind, and it matters, and it shows. So we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you so much. And Tim, happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Is it over yet?
Oh.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. All right, what a way to spend your birthday. Oh, I can't imagine a better group of people, right? Okay, we're on G, harassment, intimidation, and bullying. That's a consent item. We'll move on. Then we come to board committee reports.
Will we be able to get a copy of that presentation? Is that something?
It was sent to us with
We
the
have that,
superintendent's Monday letter.
My Monday night notes.
Yep, you have it. And again, I'll say on committee reports also, thank you for those of you. I think we have almost all of us now doing summaries, or we've had them all along. And I think, so the board has copies of what's going on in the committee. So if we could just be very brief in our reports, that would be helpful. I think first up is the student report.
Good evening. For our 6th student liaison report, Allie and I surveyed students on their perceptions of AP classes offered at PHS. We asked students about their motivations for taking AP classes, their attitudes towards taking them, and the potential option of limiting the number of AP classes a student can enroll in. A total of 163 students were surveyed. As usual, all of the students surveyed responded through a voluntary online Google survey posted in grade-specific Facebook groups. We first surveyed students on the number of AP courses they plan to take by the end of their senior year. Around 18% of students said they plan to take 1 to 4 AP classes by the end of their senior year, 50% plan to take between 5 and 9, and 30% plan to take between 10 and 14 AP classes. Freshmen reported they would take more AP classes by their senior year than upperclassmen, suggesting that they may overestimate the number they can feasibly complete. If the students answered yes to having already taken an AP class, we asked them what their motivation was for signing up. Approximately 81% of students said they took an AP class because they were interested in the subject, 89% said they did so because it looks good on college applications, and 26% of students said they took an AP class because their friends were in them. Another commonly cited reason, earning redeemable college credit, was cited by 60% of students as a reason for taking an AP course. Many students speak about pressure from themselves or others to take an AP class, so we also surveyed where these pressures originate. 84% of students said they are pressured by their own expectations for academic success, 63% felt pressured by their peers, and 40% of students said they felt pressured by their parents to take an AP class. These reflect an academic culture at our high school where APs are the overwhelming way students seek to prove themselves academically. We would suggest this comes at the expense of attention towards other rewarding academic opportunities. Approximately 2/3 of students surveyed stated that they believe PHS over-prioritizes AP classes. Lastly, we asked students if they believe that they should be limited in the number of AP courses they're allowed to take. Students had varied perspectives on this issue. 45% of students felt that there should be no limit on AP courses. The other 55% varied in terms of what they believe the limit should be. The median student surveyed supported a limit of enrollment in 5 AP classes per year per student. Only 3% of students surveyed said that PHS should not offer AP classes. Interestingly, underclassmen and students taking many AP courses were more likely to support unlimited enrollment, where upperclassmen and those taking few APs were more supportive of restrictions. For next month, we are looking to survey students and collect further information on vaping at PHS. We hope that the information we collect will supplement and contextualize forthcoming data from the Corner House survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sam.
Do we have any questions?
Can you send us the report?
Yeah, can we get a copy of the report?
I do have one question.
Yeah.
Did you say 153 students replied?
160.
163. Do you know, when you do these surveys, much about what's in your sample?
Sure. Yeah, we collect data based on race, gender, and grade.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Wonderful. All right. We're moving on to committees. I think the first is the Equity Committee. Michelle?
I reported at our last board meeting, so I won't repeat the report other than to say our next Equity Committee meeting is on March 11th at 7 p.m. here in Valley Road.
Thank you very much. Greg, could you report on facilities, please?
Sure. Actually, I think we spent a lot of time on facilities, so I'm just going to say that everyone knows what we focused on. So our next meeting is March 11th as well.
Okay. Finance, Bill.
Finance Committee met twice during February, on February 19th and 25th. On the 25th, reviewed the proposed budget for 2019 to 20 and discussed the significant gap between the expected revenues and expenses. We're continuing to seek solutions to reduce this gap, and if you've been watching the Finance Committee over the last year, you'd know that we've focused on how to address our expenses for over a year now. And sorry, this was on the 19th. We also met with Phoenix advisors to discuss investing the referendum proceeds and heard presentations from 2 different groups, one an investment advisor and the other a bank. I believe Dan Dart is going to briefly discuss these presentations and how we analyzed for selecting one over the other.
Yes, thank you, Bill, and I'll be brief. As many of you know, we collected $27 million, and the drawdown schedule is approximately 2 years, although that may be updated in the coming weeks. And we had a choice broadly of an investment management firm that would manage our money in a largely segregated portfolio, or handing it over to a bank would become a deposit liability. And in the event of a global financial crisis like we had, we thought it would be safer in a segregated portfolio because it would be ours. So safety was our primary concern. A second concern was how much we would earn. And in the investment management approach, we would earn approximately 2.5%. And we're being charged a little less than 3%. And so during that drawdown period, our net cost would be, at the beginning, only about 0.5%. A third criteria was reporting, because if you earn over a certain amount, in this case 2.74%, it's called an arbitrage amount, you actually have to file a report and pay tax on it to the IRS. And so the firm that we recommend does a constant monitoring to that. In the event we do earn over 2.74%, they will file the report for us. So the firm that we evaluated and finance unanimously recommends, with the support of our advisor, Phoenix, is called New Jersey ARM. And ARM stands for Asset and Rebate Management Program. So they specialize in this area. They have close to $100 billion in assets under management. And they went through the portfolio, which is very, very safe. It has an average maturity of a year. It's mostly U.S. Treasuries. And within the $100 billion, they have $9.3 billion in referendum bond proceeds. Mm. So this is their specialty. And they've been regulated by the state and approved for school district and municipal investments. So this is a unanimous recommendation of the Finance Committee.
Yeah, and we'll be voting on that shortly. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dan.
I'll just finish up the 25th real quick. We met That was yesterday, our last meeting with Stephanie. Sad for me because I've enjoyed working with her for over 2 years. She's a steady and analytical presence that I will miss. I'm sure everyone else will miss her too. But in our meeting yesterday, we analyzed the bills, the payroll, financial section of the board agenda. We also discussed the audit of the finances of the district, which we'd been waiting on for quite a while for approval of the state. There really weren't any significant findings. It was one really minor finding, so it shows that we've done a good job in how we manage our finances, which doesn't mean that we have extra money. Stephanie updated our committee briefly on the cost savings efforts having to do with benefits and reported that employees are being supplied with a personalized letter explaining how much each employee would save if they switched to a high deductible insurance plan with a health savings account. These insurance plans and health savings accounts and how they work together are pretty complex, and I hope if any of the employees are listening to this, they would be open-minded about it and consider reaching out to the administration if they have any questions. Stephanie, can you give your cell phone number real quick?
Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
So we concluded with a long discussion about our facilities and how our finance committee can do a deep dive into the relationship between how we manage our facilities and the impact on finances. We also had a discussion today with Krista Galen and Gabe Shackney of our technology department about a proposed purchase of projectors for classrooms. They've conducted a really thorough and convincing analysis of why we need to replace our current projectors that are limping along and replace them with laser projectors, which the technology team also has negotiated a great price deal on. Next meeting is March 11th at 2 p.m. in this building, scheduled to be open, and the public is encouraged to attend.
To follow up on your HSA comments, there will be 2 presentations, I think in April, 2 separate presentations, just explaining the process, and then also during open enrollment during May.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For those?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just go ahead and start without me if I'm not there.
Thanks, Bill. Debbie, personnel.
Personnel met yesterday. We had some search updates. 3 candidates for the high school principal position had a meet and greet yesterday with parents, students, and teachers. Each attendee evaluated the 3 candidates, and all the paperwork was given to Steve. Business Administrator Tom Venanzi, great, will be our interim BA starting 3/1 until 6/30/19. Again, we thank Stephanie for all she has done for the board and Princeton Public Schools. You will be missed. Tonight, the board will approve the retirement of Gary Weissman. As Director of Plants and Operations, we wish Gary lots of luck and thank him for his 19 years with the district. Human Resources will be attending several job fairs over the next 2 months. The committee discussed in detail about the status of 24 students representing 18 families who currently attend Princeton Charter School, but whose families have not yet confirmed their addresses at Valley Road. Students and their families have 1 year at Princeton Charter School, have to attend 1 year at Princeton Charter School and then can live anywhere and still attend Princeton Charter School. However, if the family domiciles outside of Princeton, then the town they live in will pay the tuition to the charter school. The residency audit has been in place since August 2018, and we still have 18 families who have not verified their addresses. The board discussed again sending letters to confirm addresses, this time from the head of the charter school. Otherwise, Princeton Public School must budget for these 24 students for the 2019-2020 school year. Once districts submit their budgets, PPS will not be able to proactively have another district pay for a student's tuition who has moved out of Princeton. In April, there will be 2 open registration days for Princeton Charter School families at Valley Road. This process will be a continuation of the residence audit. Oops. On February 12th, the Board of Ed approved the appointment of Michael J. Volpe for the position of Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Public Information, and Community Relations. He will be starting on April 16, 2019.
Thank you, Debbie. Greg, policy, and Jess.
So on behalf of Jess and myself and the Policy Committee, we met on February 15th, and just very, very briefly, we're doing 2 different tracks at the same time for Policy Committee. One is the internal transition to our new NJSBA policy manual. So there's 6 policies up for second reading for the board tonight. It's the 7,000 series, which is facilities, which is very, very timely right now. And then the other thing, though, and Jess is taking the lead on this, is for policy to look at the other areas that are so important for our district. And we are focusing on helping with the effort on vaping. And so we'll be focusing on that in the near future. And that's going to be a focus of our work. And so I think that's it for now.
Thank you. Thank you. I believe that takes us to, are we doing another open? We did our
student achievement.
Oh, I'm sorry, student achievement.
one more.
Oh, excuse me, Betsy.
Now we have so many committees.
I'm
It's hard
just
to keep
moving
track.
on.
The Student Achievement Committee met twice since our last board meeting, so I will try to keep this brief, but we've been doing a lot. Friday, January 25th, and Friday, February 8th, here in this room. We approved minutes. Obviously, we had a number of textbooks, which are on the agenda this evening. Those were very interesting presentations. One was on an AP European history textbook that Stephanie Greenberg presented. Eddie Cohen and two biology teachers at the high school, Alexis Custer and Christina Hayda, presented a new textbook for use with all freshmen in biology. And Kelly Curtis, supervisor of mathematics, presented a new textbook for the applications and modeling of math course for primarily juniors and seniors. So those textbooks are on tonight's agenda for approval. The Investment Club field trip was approved by the committee. The committee reviewed the responsibility of the Student Achievement Committee to review curriculum and curricular programs, professional development, student progress, and other student-related topics. Speaking of student-related topics, we have started to hear special education updates at Student Achievement 3 times a year. So in January, Mickey Crisafulli, Crystal Riddick, and Eric Zolak presented a special education department update to the committee, and they spoke primarily, I keep saying that tonight, on topics such as professional development, student transitions, and program changes. We also heard about the New Jersey graduation requirements that are in flux at the moment. Our staff is in close touch with the New Jersey DOE, but for now we are following current testing requirements. The Student Achievement Committee has asked for an update on this topic every time we meet until the matter has been resolved. The committee heard about the new centralized registration process for kindergarten, which will take place at Valley Road. Actually, it took place at Valley Road, February 11th, 13th, and 14th. We also spoke about the DLI program at CP, which is open to students incoming kindergartners in grade 1 who are zoned for any elementary school within our district. We will hear an update on kindergarten registration and DLI interest at our meeting this coming Friday. Maricela Bajaj and Annie Kosick shared the district's plans for the Professional Development Day on February 15th, so we look forward to hearing more about that at our next meeting. Andrew Skovanec came. He's our senior webmaster, and we spoke about our new website. And the launch happened sooner than we had anticipated, but it has gone well. Feedback notes, it's easier to navigate. It's more user-friendly, but we do encourage the public. We have a site feedback button on our website now. Please do send us feedback. We congratulated Andrew on this launch, and we are very happy for the community that we have this new beautiful website. Krista Gallion, Director of Technology, attended to share the ongoing work of the Technology Steering Committee, and their goal is to have a 3 to 5 year technology plan to be revisited annually, but she'll come back in June with an update on the committee's work. So we meet again this Friday, March 1st at 12:30. The public is encouraged and invited to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Any questions for any of the committees? Okay, then I think we'll move on. We're on to policies, and we have a second reading, a number of policies up, and again, they're on the 7,000 series. Greg, did you want to say anything on that?
Sure, very, very briefly. I just wanted to call attention for the public and the board to, sorry.
Hang on one second.
Absolutely.
Can we have a motion to discuss? Jess, second? Dan? Thank you. Okay, keep going.
Thanks. So I just wanted to call attention especially to policy 7450, which is lays out basically the relationship of the 4 different parties for all construction. And so I think this is very relevant right now. And so 7450 basically points out that the superintendent will identify the appropriate point person from the district, and that point person or point persons will then be working with the construction management firm representative, and both are jointly responsible for supervising the construction projects going forward. The supervision includes field inspection of all contractors, administrative review of the architect's activities, and any other construction matters relating to the interest of the school district. Our board secretary and VA is responsible for reporting to the board on the progress that the contractors are doing and that the architect is doing to make sure that this work aligns with the plans and contracts approved by the board. Any change order, we've heard a lot about that, involving any additional cost must be authorized by this board to be reviewed and approved. And under 7450, upon completion of a project, it's the architect, they'll make a recommendation for acceptance of a building project to the board, but only after final inspection by the architect, contractors, and school officials. So again, this is the policy that really highlights the partnership going forward as we embark upon the referendum. So with that, Policy Committee wanted to open it up, and I just, again, since this is our last opportunity to be working with Stephanie, thank you, Stephanie, for everything you've done. And thank you for, on a personal note, just how much you've taught me and how much you meant to all of us here on the board. So thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Do we have any discussion on those policies that are up for second read? If there's no discussion, I think we go to a vote. We have a show of hands. All in favor? Okay, we've got motion passed. Thank you. That moves us on to K, personnel. Can I have a motion? Betsy? Second. Greg? Do we have any discussion on the personnel agenda items that were attached to our agenda tonight?
I just have one comment. I'd like to wish Gary well in your retirement. I'd also like to take a moment to congratulate Tracy Goldberg on her retirement. I'm a CP parent, and as a member of the CP PTO, I've had the opportunity to observe Tracy's outreach efforts firsthand related to initiatives such as after-school clubs that the PTO offers, and her efforts to get these clubs and other opportunities to every single student in the school. So I heartily thank her for all she's done for Princeton students.
Thank you, Betsy.
I'd like to say just a word about Gary Weissman. So I'm checking my cell phone because Gary and I have this relationship where we're communicating at weird times. Yeah. Could be 4:15 in the morning, talking about snow. This latest text from Gary came at, this is a more reasonable hour, Gary. This is 6:25 on a Sunday. Hi, Steve. Some strong winds are predicted. We experience those, most of us. So I have someone checking the schools early for any power outages, which are notorious in Princeton. I'll let you know if there are any issues. And there were, but they were actually resolved by our crew before most people got to work. That's the kind of work that Gary's doing. He's checking our schools. He's maintaining the safety of our buildings, but he's doing it all because of the people in them. And one of the things that struck me, even in your note announcing your retirement, Gary, you just talked about how blessed you felt to have worked in this district and with the people in it. And schools are not about buildings. They're the people in them, and you understood that. You cared for those buildings, but mostly you cared for us. And I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
And no, I won't say anything about Gary because we've worked too long together, and he calls me the Ice Princess. We're going to keep it that way.
Ice Princess.
3 more days.
3 more days. All right. Are we ready to, can we move forward then to a vote on our personnel agenda?
Yes, and this is roll call.
Yep.
Sorry, it's late. Beth Barron.
Yes.
Debbie Braunfeld.
Yes.
Daniel Dart.
Yes.
Jessica Deutsch.
Yes.
Bill Hare.
Yes.
Sorry. Betsy Calber-Baglio.
Yes.
I'm sorry, was that it? Sorry. Greg Stenkowitz.
Yes.
Michelle Tuck Ponder.
Yes.
Evelyn Spahn.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Motion passes. We're on to L, curriculum and instruction, and these are all consent items. I'm just going to read the titles. Educational Consulting Services, Princeton Family Institute. Grant approval and acceptance, Sustainable Jersey for Schools, small grant. Textbook approval. Any questions on those? And then we move on, those are under the consent. And then we move on to Student Services, Special Ed. Number 1, these are also consent items. I'm going to read the titles. Revised Professional Consulting Services for Silvergate Prep School. Educational Placement, 2018-19. Is that correct? Yes. And then Settlement Agreement. Those are all consent items. Any comments, questions? Item N, Business, Finance, Plant, and Transportation. We are coming to the number 1, the Annual School Audit. Ending June 30th, 2018. And this is an action item, and we are considering this because we would have done this in December and in October. The Finance Committee met with the auditor and heard the results of the audit, but we were unable to accept it at that time because there was a New Jersey state number that all districts in the state were waiting for, and we have finally received that, and so now we are able to accept our audit. So can I have a motion? Bill, second. Dan, any discussion? If so, we'll move to a vote.
Wait, you have to.
Sorry, no discussion. Do you want to call for a show of hands? Or we have
Show
to have a
hands,
voice
fine.
vote on the audit?
No, we can.
Show,
What would you do?
no roll call? I think we might need to do a roll call.
Okay, we'll do a roll call.
Yeah.
It's too late for me to remember. Beth Barron.
Yes.
Debbie Braunfeld.
Yes.
Daniel Dart.
Yes.
Jessica Deutsch. Bill Hare.
Yes.
Betsy Kalber-Baglio.
Yes.
Greg Stankiewicz.
Yes.
Michelle Tuck-Ponder.
Yes.
Evelyn Spahn.
Yes.
Thank you. Passes.
And the second item is the annual school audit, the management report on administrative fines, financial compliance, and performance. And again, may I have a motion?
So move.
Dan, second. Bill? Any discussion? I will note that there was no substantial item on that audit that was pointed out. There was one minor item that was a record-keeping question, a discrepancy.
Correct.
So otherwise, it was a clean audit. So again, we do a roll call on that, or should we do a show of hands?
We'll do a roll call. Beth Barron.
Yes.
Debbie Braunfeld.
Yes.
Dan Dart.
Yes.
Jessica Deutsch.
Yes.
Bill Hare.
Yes.
Betsy Kalber-Baglio.
Yes.
Gregory Stankiewicz.
Yes.
Michelle Tuck-Ponder.
Yes.
Evelyn Spahn.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that takes us to the public forum comments on the annual financial audit. Seeing none, I think we can move on. The next is financial reports, which is a consent item. And then designation of depositories, consent. The Garden State Coalition of Schools membership, I believe that's
It's an action.
action item. Greg, do you want to just say a quick sentence about what that is?
Sure, very, very briefly. The Garden State Coalition of Schools is a membership organization of 100 school districts here in New Jersey. I'm very excited that we are considering rejoining this group of schools and districts. And I'm excited because it feeds into the district goals as well as the board goals of what we want to do, it to be more involved at the state level. Just as one example, the group of districts and board members are working on issues such as, for example, taking a look at how some districts like ours are penalized by the state in terms of some of the special education funds, and they're looking to see if they can work together as a group to try to generate more funding for districts like ours that have a percentage of their students who are classified above the average in New Jersey. That's just one example. The other reason, though, I'm very excited is that it builds on the work of our superintendent, who's been working with superintendents here in Mercer County and elsewhere. And it also gives us a slightly different venue As board members, we're members of the New Jersey School Boards Association. The superintendent also has an organization, but this organization involves both. And so we can be working together with superintendents and other board members in 100 other districts. And I think it aligns very nicely, and I'm excited about the work we can do together.
And thank you. I want to thank you, Greg, for bringing it to our attention, because we had our goals discussion and we talked about how we wanted as a board to be more of an advocate for our students at the state level and be more involved and proactive in our on policy issues. And you brought this to our attention, and we realized that many of our neighboring districts are highly involved, and other districts around the state. So this is something that we really, it's good for us to be involved in. And so thank you for that. Can I have a motion? Michelle, second. Dan, ready to vote on this? Can we have a show of hands?
All in favor?
All in favor? Okay, motion passed. Thank you. And I'm going to go through these consent items. I just want to say to the public that we as a board and as our board agenda, these items have been attached, and we received them on Friday, and many of us have asked questions of our business administrator and our administrators on these issues. So we look like we're going very fast because we're trying to make our 10:30 deadline. But we have had some discussion and questions back and forth, so we're not just kind of glossing through all this very quickly. We have a lot to cover, so I'll just be moving fast. If anyone has questions, I'm going to read the items. So we're now on to item number 7. I don't know what letter we're on. Joint Transportation Agreement, Burlington Township. That's a consent item. Number 9 is consortium. No, number 8 is Parent Transportation Contract 2018-19. And number 9 is consortium membership, Omnia Partners. Number 10 is consortium membership, NCPA, National Cooperative Purchasing Alliance. And Ms. Kennedy, I assume these are all ways for us to be purchasing with more favorable terms?
Correct.
Number 11 is additional state funding of non-public school security aid. Any questions? Number 12 is purchase of projectors. We're now onto an action item. And there, do we want to?
First and a second.
May I have a motion for that one? Bill and Greg, second. And shall I read the resolution there, or we just want to vote? Anyone have any questions?
Yes, anybody has any questions?
I think Bill touched on that in his summary. Okay, so we can have a vote by show of hands. All in favor? Motion passed. We are on to number 13, fire and evacuation drills, a consent item. Number 14, travel and related expenses 2018-19, consent. Number 15, travel and related expenses 2019-20, consent. And then we're on to item O, referendum. We did that already.
No, we still have one left in there.
Oh, do we?
Bond proceeds investment.
Bond proceeds investment, number 2. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Bill? Second. Dan? This is the approval of, as
NJ ARM, it's called NJ ARM.
PFM, NJ, yes, PFM/NJ ARM.
And as Dan helpfully described in the comments to our committee, we all understand this has to do with the investment of the $26.9 million in the near to longer term.
Yes, in accordance with the drawdown schedule.
Yep. Which will be determined in more detail
in the next couple
weeks. Mm-hmm. So can I have, we want to vote on this by a roll call, or we just do a show of hands? All in favor? Motion passed. That brings us to the consent vote. P, approval of the consent item. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Michelle and Betsy, second. Do we do this by roll call or show of hands?
It can be show of hands.
Show of hands in favor of the consent agenda. Passed. Motion passed.
Oh, you're ahead of me. Wait a minute, I gotta get Betsy. Okay.
Item Q, closing discussion.
See, that's gonna hit all of those.
These things.
Okay.
I think if I was sitting out there, it would be helpful to know. So
This would
great,
change
thank
all
you.
the
I sometimes
consent
lose track
items,
of the
yes.
letter, but I'm trying
So
to go
this
through that way.
Change will affect all consent items.
It's also
'cause
helpful
one,
to me.
It's one vote
to
for
make, I mean, it's just affirming
all of
Right.
those.
when you read it.
Great, because I don't want people to think, and we talked about this last time, we can go quickly, but we're not glossing things over. We are, all of these items have been looked at and reviewed by us, and if we have questions, we have discussed them, and we have a new policy where we do ask questions of our administrators, and then the response comes to all of us. And so I hope that's been helpful to the board. I had two things that I wanted to bring up. One, Dan had suggested when we've now reduced our closed session to an hour. So we started at 6:30 tonight, but we might want to consider starting at 6 so that we could start our meetings at 7 and perhaps be done even a little bit earlier. I don't know if that's something that the board is in agreement with. I know some people work, maybe that's trickier.
Well, we historically started at 6 but had an hour and a half closed session.
And we will have, if we have issues that we need to talk about in closed session, we can go back to an hour and a half, but as a regular course, I think we're going to try to keep it to an hour. And the question is, do we start at 6 and then move our board meeting earlier? It seems like there's a general consensus there. Okay. And the other suggestion was that we think about, at least in the near future, that we might want to do 2 shorter meetings a month, where we have one meeting that is a committee of the whole, where there's no action, where we do some of these presentations and we have discussion as we've done today, because we kind of mix it up now. We're doing some really good discussion, but then we have to jump into votes and then we go back to discussion. We could have one meeting a month where we do just cover things, in particular referendum matters. And I know this next month we're going to have a lot of, it's going to be an important month because we're going to be deciding what we can get done this summer and what the timing is now that we have a construction management firm in place. And so I think that we would benefit from having the whole board involved in those discussions. So I think we're going to think about this next month, maybe having 2 shorter meetings. And then the second meeting would be this kind of general business meeting where we would do all the voting. And we can try and see how that works if people are amenable to that.
I think it might be helpful if we could vote at both of them, just in case, as things are moving along fast, and we have to make decisions. If there's a way they could both be votable.
They would be both noticed as formal board meetings, which is, I think, fine.
Are you intending to have one closed session?
I think so, one.
One would start later, or we would have a consistent, well, I guess that's something to talk about, but.
I think we need one closed session a month, that's all.
Okay.
We don't need.
And there would be public comment at all.
Both.
Correct? Okay.
I'm excited about giving up 2 nights a month, but I'd much rather not have our teachers sit here till 9 o'clock at night, and not have Sam and Allie, when they're here, sitting here late on a school night.
I agree.
And so we're relaxed in hearing. Right, exactly. So, yeah, so I'm willing to do 2 nights a month. I don't know what my colleagues think, but I think that that's a good idea.
I mean, we ended up doing three nights this month. So I think we have to see what works for our work, and as our work changes, we can change our schedule. But I think right now we have a lot going on, and it's very difficult to try to cram it all into one meeting. Dan?
I think that's a great idea, and I have to run because I have an 11-year-old at home alone.
Almost 10:30. Thank you. Thank you. Can I have a motion? Is there anything else anyone would like to bring up?
I just want to say again, I'll miss you, Stephanie. I don't really know if there are board meetings in Princeton without Stephanie. I guess we're going to find out next month. But I thank you for everything you've taught me as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Congratulations.
Oh,
thanks.
I think we could still have one more.
We have to have.
Yeah, we have one more pub. Yes, please.
Thank you. Okay. Hi, thank you so much for allowing this. Just really quickly, I just wanted to do what a bunch of different people have done tonight, and thank you so much, and thank Ms. Kennedy for all of her work on the board. In the district, I obviously have not worked with her, but I know that she has done amazing work just from being at these meetings, and you are so wonderful, and the district is so lucky to has been so lucky to have you. Same to Mr. Wiseman. And I wanted to let everyone know kind of that there will be a Tower article coming out about Ms. Kennedy. So if you want to hear about all of her wonderful achievements, you should look at it once it comes out.
There was any achievements.
And also, I want to publicly ask that Ms. Kennedy does not hunt me down after this. Thank you.
You're going to be in trouble, Missy.
We can't guarantee that. Yes, Michelle.
Just one last thing, and I just want to note that our sports teams at the high school are crushing it. In wrestling, girls basketball,
Thank you.
track,
Yeah.
they are crushing it. So I just wanted
Wonderful.
to make sure that we acknowledge
Yes,
how
absolutely.
their performance, because
Thank you for bringing that
yeah,
to
they're
the
doing
table.
a great job.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else? Have I forgotten anything?
We have the alumni panel tomorrow.
Oh, yes.
Do I have a?
It's in the black,
Huh?
in the black box
4:30 in the
theater.
black box. We have, and what's the theme? The theme is.
It starts at 3 to
Yes.
3. Yeah, yeah.
3:30.
Yeah, 3. The notice actually said 3, so probably.
And we have one.
3:30?
We have one. Ally Spahn, who's going to be in that. Do we not? Presenting as an alumni.
Yeah.
Did you not know that? No. Oh.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have one thing
Yeah.
before you close. If you're going to, if all of you are going to have additional board meetings, you have to come up with a schedule.
Yeah.
And then it's going to have to, you're going to have to identify the times. And if the times are going to be different, that's got to be noticed. So.
Yep. Thank
And
you.
you need to notice it in, sufficient time to be able to hold the additional meetings. And you also wanted to add a budget workshop.
That's right.
Right. She is. She will. She has 2 more
two more
days.
days.
Yeah.
If we're having a budget workshop next month, I don't know that we're having another board. I mean, I think we have to. 2 is probably the max for the month. Yeah. Okay. So can I have a motion to adjourn? Bill, second. Jess, thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Great. Almost. You almost. Look at that. Amazing.
When I say 10:30.